It is now 7 p.m. Call the meeting to order for the September 21st meeting of the Town of Warren Zoning Board of Review. I will just remind the members that we have a new audio system, so make sure to activate your microphone. The green light indicates it's on. And as they are extremely sensitive, please try to avoid excess rustling of papers and distracting noises if possible. Good evening, all who are gathered this evening. I am the chair, Andrew Ellis. We'll just make sure we have a quorum by having the roll call. To my right is Jason Rainone, followed by Jason Nystrom, Michael Alves, who is the first alternate, Barrett Holby, who is the vice chair, and David Francis, who is the second alternate. Chuck Thibodeau appears to be absent this evening, so in that case, Mr. Alves will move up to be a voting member of the board, and Mr. Francis will remain an alternate, so that if any matter tonight is continued and we have another member absent in the future, those present will be able to continue and hear any applications going forward. We have a couple of sort of administrative housekeeping items on the agenda that I need to address before we dive into the formal applications. So under our old business agenda, application 2222, which was located at 1 Drysdale Street, we have received communication from the attorney representing that applicant dated September 8th of this year. And the applicant has decided to withdraw the application. So this will be removed from the agenda and is no longer a matter pending before this board. Secondly, under old business, we have applications 2229 and 2230 located at 49 Overhill Road. On the advice of the town solicitor, we have been informed that there is pending legal action ongoing with regard to these applications, and state law gives the court system jurisdiction over this matter at this time, and it is not currently in the purview of this board. Therefore, we will not be able to hear anything in this application, will not be able to continue until such time as the court has provided further guidance or the issue has been resolved. So at this time, we need a motion to withdraw this application, to remove it from the agenda without prejudice, which again will give the applicant the opportunity that when this matter is resolved, they're free to refile the application.
So moved.
I believe that was
Second.
yes. Yes, we're removing this application from the agenda. It will no longer be an item before this board. And at such time as the matter is resolved, the applicant is free to resubmit an application. So that was moved and seconded. All in favor of removing the application?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so these two applications have been removed from tonight's agenda. Moving into the new business, we have had a request that application 2238 located at 3 Poconoke Trail, currently listed as number 7 under new business, is going to be moved to the front because we're going to need to continue that pursuant to a site visit. Is there anyone here representing that application? We'd like to come forward and just identify yourself for the record while we state what's needed.
Well, hello, Chairman and the board. My name is Angela Regan. I live at 3 Poconoke Trail here in Warren.
Okay, very good. So Ms. Regan, we've been informed that a site visit is going to be necessary in order for the board and any abutters or members of the public who want to view the property in order to make determination on this application. So we'll need you to request that we continue this hearing to the October meeting such that the site visit can be scheduled between now and then.
Yes, thank you. That is correct. That's what we would like to do.
Okay. So is there a motion to continue this pending a site visit? And we will determine the date for the site visit once we have the motion.
I can make a
Motion to move the application 2238 to the October meeting pending a site visit.
Okay,
Second.
seconded, all in favor? Any opposed? Okay, so is there a particular day of the week or time, or is it fairly flexible from your
Very
point of view? So members of the board, we need to determine a date and time for the site visit to take place.
What day is the October meeting? Is that this
I've got it on the
20th.
20th?
It's on the 19th.
19th.
Yeah, I'm not in favor of having it on the same day, just because we've been having quite a long evenings. And, you know, by the time I get home, it's 5 o'clock, and then by the time we're done with our business, it's like 10:30. So if there's another time that would work, that would be like after.
Yeah,
work
we're
in the
certainly
evening.
not obligated to have it on the same day. It
Yeah.
just needs to happen at some point prior to the next hearing.
The 10th is a holiday.
That's the Monday holiday.
Yeah, it's called
Columbus Day.
Yeah, I'm away that weekend. I'm pretty free
The week
outside.
of the 10th, I will be out of town on business.
Okay.
Before
Mm-hmm.
or after the.
All right, so not the week of the 10th.
Is the 4th too early? Is that, we have to advertise or?
No, we're far enough away to advertise to the 4th, if that's.
48 hours.
Unfortunately, I know I am not available on the 4th.
So we need 5 people to attend the site visit. We're going to be the same 5 people who will be attending the October meeting.
So what are your travel constraints that week?
With the 5th work?
Uh,
We want to get it done earlier in the month.
let's see, I'm tied up on the 5th. She's tied up on the 3rd. I could do Thursday the 6th if that works for anyone.
Thursday the
free.
6th, is that?
Mr. Chair, I just noticed
Yeah.
unfortunately, I will not be able to make the October meeting, the 19th. So
Okay, so you were not available for the October meeting, so I guess that means that the 5 remaining people, well, I guess it wouldn't have to be because we haven't heard anything on this case yet. And Chuck is available also. It could be any 5, including Chuck.
Would the 18th work for anyone, the day before?
If it was early enough, the 18th would work for me.
What is early enough?
I could probably do 5:30 or 6.
So 5 o'clock for Tuesday, the 18th?
Is that agreed, the 18th?
I think 5. Can we just do a little after 5? I have to
5:30.
travel from West Bay to get here, to get back into town, and sometimes it's 5 when I get into town.
So how about 5:30?
5:30-ish work.
Okay.
All right, so that is the 18th. What did we say, the 18th?
Yeah,
5:30, Tuesday, the 18th.
5:30, Tuesday, the 18th.
And we
So
just
that
gotta
will-
confirm that with Chuck too, right? We have to confirm that because he's.
Well, he can come if he wants to.
All right.
We'd have 5 people,
All right.
so he's more than welcome to join us should he wish. That will be publicly advertised, so we will see you at that time. All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Yes, I think, yes, you're free to stay, but you may depart if you would like. Next, under new business, we've had a request that application 2237 located at 84 Cutler Street, currently listed as number 6, be moved up to the front of new business to accommodate a medical request to make it a little bit less strenuous on the applicant. So we will do that. So, Mr. Aruda, do you want to come forward or your representative?
What do we have?
84.
Which one is that?
All right.
Yeah, I had a knee replacement 2 weeks ago, so.
Very good. So if you can just state your name, address, and give
Can
us,
you hear me? Is this on?
and
My name is Andy Aruda. My building is at 84 Cutler Street in Warren.
yep. And just give us a brief description of what you're here to request and why you feel there is a hardship.
Well, I didn't realize that I had to come.
I'm sorry, a
before the board.
special use.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. Explain, you're asking for a special use on the property.
Yeah, to rent parking places, 6 parking places on my lot. I've been doing it. There was a anonymous complaint. And I didn't realize I even had to ask permission to rent parking spaces on my lot. So that's why I'm here. And it's kind of basic. It's just renting
So what,
parking spaces for cars.
so cars go in these 6 parking spaces?
Yeah.
Is this for long-term storage of the vehicles, or people are just using this for off-street parking? What's the purpose?
Street parking, mostly it's for 2 months. 3 months, it could be a year, but I don't keep any contracts or anything. It's not anything that long.
So you're renting the parking spaces, so private automobiles can park in those spaces during some period of time.
Yes.
Let me just ask the zoning official. How is this any different from a parking lot, let's say at a condominium where people pay to have the right to use a parking space?
Because it's not with the business, it's a different, if it's a different entity. So like a condo complex, you would rent, it's part of the residence. This is different. You have businesses there already. They have parking for the businesses. So this is an extra, we'll call it business at that location. So it's not part, if it was XYZ business that was there and they were using it for them, then that would be fine under the permitting. But this is a total different
This is a
business.
separate business operation.
Correct.
Different from the businesses that currently exist on the site.
Excess spaces that have been sitting empty and they're not being used.
And
I'm
so,
fulfilling all the tenants' needs and these are not being used.
are you, based on the tenants you currently have, are you satisfying the requirements under the ordinance for the number of parking spaces you're required to have?
I believe I am. I mean, I
Has anyone
counted all
done
the
the
tenants. I
calculation?
put it on the paperwork that I have. I have 8 businesses.
Yeah,
It ranges from day to day. Some businesses, they don't have any employees there at all. They just use it for storage, like a couple of them store beer and wine and they use it as distribution and they're never there. But I have a total on average daily about 28 to 32 employees there on a daily basis. And as you can see on my map, I have about 60 parking places.
right. And let me ask the zoning official, has the mathematics been done to determine based on the square footage of the businesses? How many parking spaces are required on the property for its current tenants?
Yes, I believe so. As long as, I mean, if he's saying it's only going to be 6, then it meets the requirement for what is there now.
It may be 8. I mean, it's not much more. I don't want to make it so my tenants don't have places to park and that hasn't been a problem yet.
So-
It is, then I don't rent them.
Do we know the number that he is required to have based on his current tenants?
At this time, no, but the 6 would, when I looked at this, the 6 would be sufficient. The biggest concern is that we do have a zoning ruling from this board with the school in the front that there has to be a certain amount of parking spots. That was a ruling from this board when the school came for their use permit.
And that would still be not infringed by these 6 spaces or 8 spaces that he's renting?
Yes. I believe these spaces are in the back. They're not near the school.
Is the business entity that owns the property and leases the spaces also resident on this property?
Yes. I have an office right there.
Okay, so I guess as a function of a leasing agency that is approved to lease the rest of the spaces in this building or on this property, is there a reason that entity can't simply lease parking lot space?
Right, I'm leasing the rest of the space.
It'd be considered an accessory use, right, the principal, which is the leasing company, therefore I need a special use permit to get that leasing business, and then you also need a special use permit to get it.
I guess what I'm wondering is the leasing business is existing.
Correct, but it's possibly via a special use permit.
Well, is it? Is his existing business licensed under a special use permit, or is it a business that's allowed by right under the ordinance?
But what's the business, by the way?
Property business. I own both buildings.
Oh, so you're just leasing.
I rent commercial property.
So,
I had a business in there 15, 20 years ago. When I sold the business, I rented out my part of the building and I ended up just renting out the rest of the building.
so your business, I think, would be described as general business. You're not manufacturing some, it's a general business.
Now it's just general commercial property rental.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
The zoning official has made a determination that the application is distinct. I know I just spoke about accessory use, but he's considering that the primary use and he's the authority to be able to town to make that decision.
So,
That's what the applications require you on this.
all right, so we're treating the use of leasing of the parking spaces as a distinct element on the property.
Correct.
So his company leases space on that property, building space, but he has to get a special variance to lease space for parking. Okay.
So we had an applicant, I think it was 2 months ago, go for open lot storage in the next property over. So this essentially is the same, not at the same scale, but it's open lot storage is what Mr. Reuter is doing. And, and he's been very willing to work with us. This is, something that, I've had many people call me on this and I said, this is something that he did and didn't realize it. And he's before us now because he wants to make it legitimate.
Okay, so are we considering this to be open lot storage of vehicles or commercial off-street parking? Just so we can cite the right section.
And
We have 3254 transportation uses. What's that?
3255.
3254 transportation. There's a place for commercial off-street parking. So if he's renting.
So it's currently listed on the 55, which is the same use that was given to that other open lot storage. It falls on the new products and machinery.
Yeah, well, this isn't new products and machinery, it's automobile
I
parking.
understand that, but 2 months ago, when that application became very similar fact in terms of open space for vehicles, it was under 10-55. And that's the same use that he's applying for now. So it can be amended on the floor if that's what the board wishes.
I understand what the solicitor is saying. I think we're just trying to make sure we're citing the most appropriate section, because I remember, if my memory serves me correctly, the petition that was before us last month or a couple of months ago that we're referring to, in addition to storing vehicles, I want to say there was also discussion about maybe like campers or boats, which in my mind, I certainly would agree would be whole, exactly. But if this use is going to be strictly like passenger cars, that sort of thing, maybe it would be more appropriate under it as a commercial off-street parking facility. Both are allowed under special use. I just,
Certainly, it could be amended on the floor. Because
Yeah.
that's what was applied last month and that's.
Well, I think-
But it could also be trailers or something like that.
All right, well, okay. that's-
Well,
all right.
They're not more than 12 feet long, but it, what I mean, it still fits in a parking space.
So you don't establish any discretion over what gets parked there.
As long as it fits properly and it's not impeding anybody and it's not causing any problems and it's not an eyesore.
So the option exists for someone renting that parking spot to store something other than a passenger vehicle or something.
Yes, as long as they're not working on it there, I don't allow no mechanic, they all want to work on it. No working on it, and it's not an eyesore. I have them, if there's a question, I have them send me pictures because I don't want.
Gotcha.
So in that light, I think the open lot storage
Yeah.
makes the most sense if this is going to be a mixed type of equipment / vehicle storage.
So what was the precedence of the complaint?
I'm sorry,
What was the precedence of the complaint?
I don't know. From time to, all I've done is brought in 4 businesses since I built the building from Barrington. Every once in a while I get, as the building inspector knows, complaints about silly things and I resolve them and they're always anonymous. which is disappointing because I'd rather know who it is so I can confront them and not in a bad way, but find out what's bothering them. But they hide behind anonymous and I can't resolve it. So I don't know who it is and I don't know what the concern is. So
Okay.
I do my best.
All right.
As Matt knows, I'm trying my best, but can't please everybody.
Other requests or questions with regard to the site plan and the nature of this proposed storage?
Just hours of I mean, well, it's not, I'm gonna say hours of operation, but it's hiding, I guess. Is it 24 hours? Is this time limited parking?
I'm not sure what you mean by time limited.
All right.
As far as access,
Yeah,
they have access.
okay, 24/7. Okay.
I have the cameras put in. I even have a license plate camera, which is, I put in the pictures there, you can actually see.
I was wondering what
It's
that was
amazing.
illustrating.
It's amazing. It can tell you make, model, year, license plate number. And so it might be of use to the police if anything ever happens down that way, but that was put in about 3 months ago. So I also have cameras around the whole property, but it is 24-hour access.
Well, you
The
might,
tenants come in and go out.
you might be able to get a good deal on a whole bunch of license plate cameras the state isn't gonna be able to use anymore, so.
Yeah.
So you have it sounds like you have surveillance and security and you have appropriate lighting.
Yes.
For security purposes on the site. And that's existing as part of your business.
It's already.
Okay. Other questions before we entertain public comment?
And you rent these spaces month to month or year to year or
Those spaces month to month.
month to month?
Most of the time they stay anywhere from 3 months to a year, but I do it month to month. Because it's not worth doing contracts, because you don't know if somebody just wants to do it for the summer or they got in a car accident and they need someplace just to store their car for a month until, you know, there's always a different situation.
Right.
Okay. Would anyone from the public like to offer any comment? Yes, if you just want to step to the side, Mr. Aslan comes up to give us his.
Andre Aslan,
Yeah.
99 South Cutler Street. Andy Aruga and I have made this for a long time, and any issues that have come up have been resolved to our satisfaction.
I was 13 years old when this started. I was 13 years old when this started.
My question is, I downloaded all of this information that was submitted. Nowhere on here does it state where this is going to take place in the property, who is going to be there, how, or what is going to be covered. So when I came here, I had absolutely no idea of what was going to be taking place. So my question is, where? Is it what is already there, that's been built on the northern side of your property? Is that what you're?
So you can give us the question and then we can ask it back.
Where is the storage going to take place on the property?
Okay, that's one question. And the other question is what kind of things are going to be stored?
I'm sorry.
Was the other question, what type of items are going to be stored?
Yes.
Do you feel
What,
that's been
where,
answered?
And how?
All right. Any other questions?
What, where, and how? Those are my
Okay.
questions.
So we'll have the applicant come back up to answer the questions. So what, can you just state again, what is being stored?
Okay, what's being stored are cars, boat trailers, small campers, anything that's within like a parking space or parking space and a half, maybe. That's the what,
Where,
where.
which parking
There's
space?
no set parking spaces because if, I don't have set, like, it's not like I have a section of my space that's set for the rental. It's where it's available. So I don't want to impede my tenant spaces. So for instance, I don't rent anything in the front of the building or where my tenants are. So for the most part, I put it way in the back where the rocks are or way in the back where tenants aren't. So, but I don't have specific spaces where you don't rent it, but it's just regular parking space.
I would object to anything that was going to take place on the southern part of your property. along that line. I would object, strongly object to any.
Mr. Chair, I would recommend that they have to go through you.
Yeah.
You can't be
I can
speaking.
answer it, but.
Yeah.
If you could go through the chair, please.
Yeah, we gotta ask one, so let him finish the first three questions and then we can come back with those follow-up. So
One rest after this, and we'll just work.
that, I think that part of the evening's been dispensed with. So where, you've indicated something, we may need clarification, that, and the third part was how? Like, how is this happening, or how is this being implemented?
Oh, I mean,
Okay,
I advertise and people call me.
this seems to be quite open. I mean, any way you want to park, fine, park it. I
You know,
mean,
people just don't show up, they call me and I meet them. And
can
So-
you assure me that will not?
You need to,
Yeah.
you need to address the chair.
so hold on.
Okay.
So the question was where and how. So he's indicated that there's going to be 6 to 8 spaces used for this function.
All right, can I be assured that it will not take place on any part of the southern part of his property, on the southern part of his property line?
We're gonna have to have him come up and mark that on a site plan.
I can volunteer my sheet here, and you can indicate that.
Sure.
It
So,
looks like that southern part is actually a 2-lane passageway, and there is no parking there, or?
the only place that there would be is at the very end, which wouldn't affect you. Because it's behind the shed.
so just mark on the site plan which spaces are going to be available for this rental parking. Now, hold on, show it to me.
Yep.
Show it to
So
me
mark
first.
all the wall places, not just that.
So let me see what's being proposed.
Behind the shed way in the. He's concerned about.
Hold on, hold
So
on.
you only mark the southern part, so are there other areas, north, east, and west, that you would be parking?
So only the spaces in the area you've marked, and those spaces are already existing,
Yes.
would be used for the rental. Okay, Mr.
And
Askin?
that's only like 2 spaces there, but that's way away from where it is.
So I think
The
the-
applicant has indicated this corner where there are existing parking spaces are those that would be used for the rental parking. Does that satisfy the question?
If that's the only spot on the southern part of the property, yes,
Okay,
I don't mind that.
okay,
I have another question.
yes,
How about on the northern eastern part of the property that is already screened in, that is supposedly storage? When did this come up? I never heard anything about asking for storage on that part of the property. Not that it's going to affect me, not that I mind it. I think that's a perfect spot for it. It's just that it's questionable. It's already there. I never heard of it coming up previously.
okay, we can ask the applicant to come back up here.
You're not talking my property.
No, hold on, come back,
Please.
come back up. As difficult as this may be, so there is a concern, what I'm guessing in this, the northeast corner, is that? So maybe Mr. Asling can point it out.
Over here, Andy, this part over here.
That's not mine. I don't know, but
It goes into your property, I believe. I don't know.
So if that is not,
Okay.
if this area is not part of his property, then
I
whatever,
don't know that.
Right, but there's already storage there.
that would have to be addressed
That was
by
done
the,
2 months ago.
Yeah, that was the application from 2 months ago.
oh, that was the application.
Yeah. That's that lot.
So that was an application before us 2 months ago, and we did, that was an application that was in front of us 2 months ago,
All right,
and they did go through the proper procedures.
all right. I'm satisfied. If that's the only place that he's gonna have any storage on that. property, I can live with that. I have no problem with that.
Okay, and we can make a condition that limits his ability to only rent out parking storage spaces in that southeast corner within the existing parking spaces that are already there.
So I think a clarification that needs to be made is if I'm understanding your concern, your only concern is that on the south boundary line of the property, that is the only place that it is acceptable for parking spots to be rented. If he were to rent something in the northwest corner that's away from your property, you do not have an objection to that.
No, I do not have a problem.
Okay,
Okay.
Mr. Maruda has been very, very good to us as neighbors in the past. We have never had any issue that has come up has been resolved to our satisfaction. We are very happy with him as a neighbor. All worked out very well.
great.
Okay.
We hope it continues in that manner.
Right.
Anything else?
No, that'd be it.
Okay, thank you, Mr.
All right, thank you.
Aslan. Are there other members of the public who would like to make commentary on this application? Okay, yes, come forward, please, and identify your name and address so the stenographer can report that to the record.
John Perry, I live at 47 Cutler Drive in Bristol.
Okay.
Rhode Island. My fiance and I own 80 Cutler Storage.
Okay,
Application that was from a few months ago.
Thought you
She
were
also
familiar.
owns the preschool, which is in Andy's building.
okay,
There are certain amount of parking spots that were assigned for us. Andy and I have talked about it. He's been super accommodating on how we're gonna have the parking worked out. Even though in your zoning, which I have, that says what spots were allocated for the preschool, as long as there's spots and there's tenants, we're all for it. And Andy's been really good with us with the other storage unit and working together. So he works well with us. I don't think the parking would be a huge issue. And if it is, I'm sure we can all work it out together.
okay, thank you. Any others? Okay, not seeing any. Would like to come back to the microphone if possible, please, so we can conclude. Does the board have any further questions or commentary to offer to the applicant?
I think we should mark that exhibit A before we lose track.
Okay.
and send that-
First, I'd just like to thank you for letting me come up early, because being on my feet after only 2 weeks was stressful. Thanks for pushing me to the front.
Glad to be able. Okay, so we have exhibit A, which illustrates the proposed area where the rental parking spaces will be.
Well, to be fair, that diagram indicates the only acceptable spaces on the south side of the town.
Correct. That if the parking was relocated elsewhere, it wasn't a point of contention, it was just on the south side, that was the southeastern corner that you identified as the only area along the southern property line that was acceptable.
Correct.
And that any other rental spaces have to take into account the requirements for your tenants parking and not interfere with those requirements. Other discussion? All right, so whoever is making this motion.
I'll make a motion to approve application 2237, Andy Aruda applicant and PBR Properties owner, 84 Cutler Street, plat map 8, lot 115, request for a special use permit under section 3255 to allow open storage area in the business zoning district. In approving this, we feel that the special use will be compatible with the neighboring land uses. We have 82 Cutler Street, basically 80 across this, we're nearby, storing cars, campers, and slate and other things. And this already has cars in it, and we're only talking about 6 to 8 parking areas. The special use will not create a hazard in the neighborhood and will keep his neighbors happy if he keeps them to the southeast side of the lot, and hopefully there can be other places, but on the south area, right by, forgot your name, Andres Hasla's house, prefer not to have the parking there. Special use permit will be compatible with the community comprehensive plan, and the public convenience and welfare will be served by allowing people to have extra space for their cars and campers or what have you on the lot. And it does seem to be pretty much out of the way and not in anyone's direct purview. That is all.
Okay, are there any amendments or conditions?
Well, the conditions were to hopefully have the parking on the southeast side of the neighborhood or other parts of the building. We're talking about 6 to 8 parking spaces. And that was it.
Also note that this will not supersede any previous decisions by this board, that you need to remain or keep in place the required parking that was already decided. Anything other? Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so the application is approved. Good luck with your rental parking.
Thanks.
Yes.
But just make sure that, they're on the looking at is exactly what kind of vehicle come up and pass. I just want to make sure, like, for example, storage containers, none of that type of stuff that is not easily movable.
No, it's horrible.
Okay, so it has to be on wheels.
I relied on the cities to go back and look at and see exactly what was approved, so.
Okay, so we will make sure that that includes,
Gotta have wheels.
it has to have wheels.
Easily movable.
Yes, and it has to fit within 1 to 1.5 parking spaces.
And Mr. Aruda testified to the fact that there would be cars, small campers, trailers, anything with wheels on it.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck.
All right, so moving back to the top of the new business agenda, we have application 2233, John Sheridan, Sheridan Associates, the applicant. Robin Kennedy DeSocio and Patrick DeSocio located at 4 Blackthorn Lane, flat map 16 lot 328. Request for variance under section 3277 to construct a garage and addition with less than the required front and rear yard setbacks in the R40 zoning district. Good evening, Mr. Sheridan. You can again identify yourself and explain the purpose of the application.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is John Sheridan of the 34 Brown Hill Street in Warren. I'm the architect and the applicant for the owner of Robin Kennedy DeSocio and Patrick DeSocio. I'm going to present the application. Patrick is here to answer any additional questions and talk about his outreach to the neighbors. The owner's request relief from the required 40-foot front yard setback and 60-foot rear yard setback to allow for a garage extension and master bedroom addition. The garage extends 6 feet towards the street to make room for a new first floor mudroom, laundry, and powder room. The proposed garage addition will be 35 feet from the property line with 40 feet required. The master bedroom addition will give owners a much needed third bedroom. The master addition will be 48 feet from the rear, where 60 is required. The added area will make the overall lot coverage 10.5%, where 20% is allowed. The reasons for the request is due to a growing family. The owners wish to add to their existing 2-bedroom, 1-story home while maintaining the character of this unique 1970 1-story house. The scope of the work is to add a 3rd bedroom along with a more family-friendly mudroom, laundry, and powder room. A 2nd floor addition we explored and separated either the parents or either just separated the family unit. So we focused more on extending the 1st floor. And it was also more reasonable as far as the cost match. The proposed garage and bedroom additions, while minimally encroaching on into the setbacks, were determined to be the most economical way to meet their needs, maintain the character of the house, and minimize the impact on the neighborhood. The size and scale of design is consistent with the parish of the area, and it's the least, we feel the least necessary. That is the reasons for the request. Pat and Robin did a great job with their neighborhood. I've never had every person come about us sign for their approval of the design. So we're open to questions.
So the first question I have is we're going to need a little bit more justification for the least amount of relief necessary, because based on the plan submitted, there is more than ample square footage available within the zoning setback lines that would still allow 1st floor additions of the square footage described but would not need to go over the setback.
Yeah, part of that was more of the function of that bedroom wing of the house. I would say the upper left side of the plan is where the current bathroom is. So, there were two reasons. One is not to disrupt all of that plumbing, and it was a better circulation to not disturb what is noted as bedroom 3, that's an existing bedroom, and that hallway is existing. So the simplest way was to kind of hang a right and put the master bedroom in that side of the house. As the added benefit of water views from through the end of Blackthorn Lane as well. So really it was a matter of kind of just the organization of the spaces. It was a lot easier functionally to go that way and not on the other side. The other piece on that is on the site plan. If you look at the site plan where the 16 by 16 master bedroom wing is being shown, if you were to put that on the left side of the house, that's where the septic, starts, that's where the distribution tank is, and then it freezes and septic field there.
So again, if the septic tank system is blocking the left-hand side, and you expressed a desire to keep the bedroom on what we're calling the bedroom wing of the house, could not that bedroom have been shifted closer to the intersection of the two wings, still on the right-hand side, keeping it within the bedroom wing, but keeping it also within the setbacks?
Kind of keeping it in that elbow on that right side.
Yeah, if you want to still have it attached to, there seems to be plenty of space in that area to still do a bedroom of that size and the new bathroom.
It
without
looks,
going over.
playing devil's advocate, it looks like that would have closed off the only window wall to bedroom 3. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, and we didn't want to block, that existing bedroom would have been cut off. And
So why not convert that bedroom into the new master bedroom, expand it, and then build a smaller secondary bedroom off that wing that still fits within the setback? It just seems like there's an awful lot of square footage here. But it's not, you're not, encumbered by the setbacks if there's no square footage available to you.
yeah, I did not, we did not explore that. We initially explored going onto up to the second floor by using the existing stair. I have to go back through my notes on why this functionally worked the best. I can't really redesign it on the fly.
Yeah, I would also say that with regard to the mudroom, again, so the mudroom is sort of attached to the, what is the southwest corner or southwest end of the kitchen, where the current garage backs up to the kitchen right now. Could not the mudroom have been placed sort of on that left-hand side, spanning between the garage and the kitchen, where you're showing, is that the pantry?
Yeah, well, that's their main circulation to get to the front door is along there. And again, construction wise, we found it most economical to build within the existing garage and extend the existing garage roof as opposed to creating a whole nother foundation for that space.
If that space was slid down into that wide joint, would you have to be eliminating that window that's there in that bedroom?
You're at the master bedroom?
I'm at the master bedroom,
Yeah.
and so you have a Y there. It looks like if it was slid down, that window for the bedroom would then.
I'm suggesting-
What if it was simply slid
Yeah,
down?
I'm suggesting reworking the plan to make that small bedroom down there, the master bedroom, by building out to get the same square footage and then building a new bedroom of the same size as the small existing one up where the new master is shown, so it doesn't go over the setbacks. I think there's a way of reorganizing the plan to swap and then moving the new bathroom so that all these elements still preserve the windows they want, views, relationship to having all the bedrooms in that bedroom wing of the house, but don't necessarily have to go over the setback. And I realize there'd be some reconfiguration of the internal part of the house, but I don't know that that's not justified based on what's
Yeah, I'm
desired.
pretty sure that regardless of where the master bedroom goes, the creation of
One
another
moment.
bedroom has to be outside of the existing box.
Correct, yeah, I think it still
And
needs
it
to
has to
go.
go somewhere that's not in the way of another bedroom. Therefore, it's gonna probably encroach somewhere.
Maybe. I'm not, I'm not
I-
100%.
Again, I haven't, I didn't bring the kind of the overall exploring all the possibilities, which I always explore. What can we do without having to do the variance? And when we determined that this got everything they needed, worked functionally, and we thought, well, this would be the least that we'd have to ask, so we decided to do that and come forward to ask for that.
Yeah, and so one of the standards we have to consider is what is the least relief necessary to achieve the goals, and the goals of the project are to make this a 3-bedroom house, right? With a mudroom. So is there a way to achieve that goal within the existing setbacks?
I am saying no, not without economic hardship or something that's more easily done this way. And so we're just asking for this.
Okay, well,
John, let me ask you this. This is a very unique house plan. I mean, the sort of Y format floor plan for the house, is it indicative of a style of building from that period of the 70s? Is
Unique for, like, it's very, it's almost California style. It's, you know, it's got little cathedral ceilings and it's got this big masonry fireplace in the middle and these large overhangs. It's pretty unique. It was kind of custom built back in the 70s by the guy that they bought it from. And they kind of wanted to maintain that look. And we looked at going up and not going for any variances. And the master bedroom wing kind of played into this pinwheel idea. So we're really more kind of respecting that original architect.
Yeah, I mean, I could certainly understand what Mr. Ellis is saying.
hold on.
I didn't think I had theme music.
You want to take a moment for everyone to put their phones on mute?
I completely respecting what Mr. Ellis is saying. I think what you have here sort of pays homage to the fact that it was that sort of pinwheel style house. And by not sort of butting out from the intersection of the 3 legs of the house, it doesn't necessarily square off the plan in some way. So I could sort of understand that. The 6-foot bump out for the garage did confuse me a bit. It took me quite a while to figure out what was happening there. So I don't necessarily know if there is another way to do that that would save, what is it, the 2 feet that we go over?
5 feet.
Is it? Oh, yeah, I guess it is. It's 5 feet.
I mean, I have a couple of designs in mind, but I'm not getting paid to redesign the plan. My own professional opinion, as an architect, I feel there are opportunities that you could accomplish the same goals. And so economic disability of the applicant is not one of the factors that plays into a hardship.
Well, only that there are, I mean, there's always explorations of other ways to do the space. There is the function of you want to go into the garage, into the mudroom, having it in some other place would have you go. You know, it's just naturally you want to go into the house, drop your stuff, you've got the powder room, and then. But all representing the building asking for, I'm not here to redesign the house here.
And I mean, the rest of the board was, I mean, may disagree with my opinion.
One question I would ask Mr. Sheridan is, I know you said, I believe the septic tank is located to the left.
Yes.
If you're looking at the house from here, it's located to the left.
Yeah, right off the house is the D box, and then the field is.
Where is it here?
Can you draw it?
Yes. So the box is here. You know, with its two little cover heads,
Yeah.
and then the field is like over here, I don't know exactly. Where it is. It's all has, there's really no addition outside that.
Yeah.
Well, unless you move, unless you change back.
All right. So it almost seems as if you really can't go to the left of the house, so you can only go down, which you're proposing for the
Yeah, you can go-
garage. Up.
Go down.
Can I see the
Mike.
septic diagram?
Would you-
The question I have, I guess, getting to that is, why can't you go to the right of the house off this Y? And again, I understand
off of the-
what is proposed to be the study. Is because I'm just looking, you know, 90, if it, the way the house is now, like 99.9% of the house is within the setbacks. And it does look like there may be some room off of what would be the bottom of the Y.
It's
if you would
literally
call that.
just totally the wrong-
Yeah, so-
It wants to be in the bedroom wing, so.
And also, this is the master bathroom, which should be furthest away from the living area.
I mean, it's-
Like,
yes,
just, you know what I mean, in the
it-
sense of,
I get, what I'm getting
Living
at
space.
is, and believe me, you know, I find the design very interesting on a personal level, but looking at the standards for what is the least relief necessary to do a house and have it done within the setbacks. Can you give a concrete reason as to why you cannot add a master bedroom wing or develop the house somehow to the right while keeping it within the setbacks?
You can do it, it's not acceptable to my clients, we want the bedroom in the bedroom wing. And yes, I feel like if there is the argument of the least relief necessary, and this is a really big lot, we are not encroaching very much. I contend that there's plenty of projects in Tuiscit that are way more pushing the envelope, and the argument that always be made that with those least relief necessaries, this is a very small addition, a very small encroachment. And I just contend, representing my client, that it's a very reasonable house.
When on the plans, there's a bulkhead bump out that looks like it would be protruding from where the new proposed master bath is. Is that
There's an
correct?
Existing bulkhead where the master bath is. So that's their entrance to the basement.
Okay.
So we're gonna rebuild that master bath foundation and have a bulkhead underneath that into the basement.
So
Okay, is the bulkhead reflected on this plan where you've got the dark areas?
No, it's on the foundation plan.
Right, yeah.
I mean, bulkhead is
Okay.
not.
yes, it
Okay.
is. It's an above grade structure,
That's
just
what
like
I'm
it's just like a deck. Doesn't it have a shed roof with doors that open that protrude above the plane of the ground? It protrudes above the plane of the ground,
Right.
just like a deck, a stoop. Anything that's not flush with the,
But it's, I
Grade.
contend it's a stairway and it's allowed to encroach into a setback.
but does it,
Oh, it's not.
does it have a cover over it that's above grade?
It shows that it does. It's like a
Yeah.
bulkhead door.
So I think the setback would be to the tip of that structure, because any structure in the setback that is above the plane of the grade, if it was just the stair and had no covering over it, then it would not be above the grade plane. So I think we'll need the dimension to the corner of that bulkhead from the rear lot line. Now, I mean, whether that's, I mean, it may be less than the 48 feet to the bedroom, which might be the closest.
Yeah. I have to figure out what that is. I can do that. If you have any more questions.
Not that this needs to be a precise dimension. Can you guesstimate the distance to the nearest neighbor's house?
I would say it's probably to the right, is the south, the easterly side, it's, you know, it's probably 150 feet. To the left, I would say it's probably 80 feet, maybe 100 feet. Yeah, they both, they're pretty big lots, and it's not on the point, so most of those lots are pretty, follow the current zoning. Yeah, the bulkhead actually pretty much stays in line with the tip of the master bedroom.
So it's no closer than 48. Okay, so 48 is the dimension to the closest encroachment. I think it would have been helpful on the actual floor plan to show where those setback lines fall in the design to help your case of why the bedroom needed to be in a certain position. Right? We can't see the internal circulation of the house on this plan that shows where that setback line is. But if we drew it onto, you know, across the floor plan, it might help us better understand, you know, why the internal circulation of the house is somewhat driving your choice to make the master bedroom in that position.
So many feet. Yeah, if you're looking at Google Maps, it's several hundred feet, if not 300 feet from the master bedroom into the woods. There's no real neighbor, you know, going to the northeast or maybe more north.
I think there's also something to be
East by
said for
north.
the fact that both of these encroachments are heading in directions that don't make them any closer to the neighbor's house. So in one instance, we're heading towards the back property line, and the other, we're heading for the road. So most of the buildable setback variances that we see are side lot setbacks, where we're talking about encroaching beyond a setback that puts that portion of the house closer to the neighbor's property. In this instance, that's not really the case.
It's just a little triangle.
Do you want me to draw that on that plan?
I think I've marked it.
Okay.
I mean, I could tell from here where it is. Yeah, I think I can figure out where it would cut through the house. Should we go to public comment?
Yes.
Okay, so let's see, is there anyone in the public who'd like to offer any commentary on this application? Okay, not seeing any. Bring it back to the applicant. Is there anything specific you'd like the homeowner to testify to? So again, just identify yourself again for the record, please.
Patrick DeSocio for Blackthorn Lane. No, I mean, I think that, you know, when we came up with the plan, came up with the design, I think it was really clever, which, you know, the best possible way to keep the integrity of the house to the directions where people wouldn't necessarily see what the additions were going to be. That was really important to us, it was really important to John and Michelle as well, as to what we're trying to accomplish. Understanding that our relationship with our neighbors is, I would say, above exceptional. Going over, knocking on everybody's door with our 2.5-year-old daughter was probably also helpful. She was a lot cuter than that. But going to introduce ourselves and introduce what the plans were going to be was something that we really want to get out well ahead of in order to make sure people are comfortable and confident with the decisions that we're making. So yeah, that's we're very excited about it. Be happier, but if you have any questions for me, I'm more than happy to answer them.
How long have you owned the house?
5 years.
And this is the first renovation to the home?
Yes, sir. I believe the house was built in 1978, but we existed the previous one.
So the only thing we're really gonna see from the road is just the garage getting a little closer to taking some of your driveway out.
It was exactly the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all trees on that side of the, from the neighbor.
There are other questions for the applicant or the owner?
I don't have any.
Someone prepared with a motion then?
Yeah, I'll do this one. I will move approval of application 22-33, John Sheridan, Sheridan Associates applicant, and Robin Kennedy DeSocio and Patrick DeSocio, 4 Blackthorn Lane, plat map 16, lot 328. Request for a variance under section 32-77 to construct a garage and addition with less than the required front and rear yard setbacks in the R40 zoning district. In moving approval of this application, we will note that the hardship is due to the unique characteristic of the subject land or structure, in so much as the house is a very unique format. The floor plan is very unusual, even for the time in which it was built. We will also note that while it has been indicated there is enough buildable property within zoning setbacks to allow for the structure to have been built within zoning setbacks, the unique orientation of the house being the long axis to the north and south of the property does make the internal flow of the house in conflict with where one could conceivably put the desired extensions to the building without disrupting the setbacks. We will also note that the west side of the property is unfortunately overcome by the septic system, which makes building to the west of the property problematic at best. This is an existing non-conforming structure. There are corners of the structure which extend into the required zoning setbacks as it is now. So that is a current condition on the property. The hardship itself is not the result of any prior action of the applicant. The applicant purchased the property 5 years ago and has done no previous renovations to it. This is simply the result of wanting to expand the property to accommodate a growing family. Granting the variance will not alter the general character of the surrounding area. The intent is actually to maintain the character of the structure. The forward-facing portion of the property that faces out towards the public right-of-way will actually look exactly the same way that it does now. It will simply be slightly closer to the street. And the additions themselves to the bedroom wing will not be visible from the road. We have heard testimony from the owner that they do have neighbor support, so there seems to be no objections by other families living in the neighborhood. And the request is the least relief necessary in so much as this is a relatively large lot. The house is sited relatively far from its neighbors. There have been no objections. And in evaluating the general floor plan and the way that the additions have been arranged, it seems to meet the requirements of not requiring a costly second floor, not separating the various family units into different levels of the home, and it maintains the character of the actual floor plan of the house, which was one of the intents of the project.
Okay, are there any amendments or conditions? Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. That would be 4-1. Your application is approved by the majority.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Good luck to you.
Okay, the next application is number 2234, Edwin T. Arnold Jr., the applicant and owner, 96 Harris Ave, plat map 13E, lot 116. Request for a variance under 3277 to install an HVAC unit with less than the required side yard setbacks in the R10 zoning district. Good evening. If you can just identify your name and address so the stenographer can record that.
Good evening, thank you. Edwin Arnold, 96 Harris Avenue. Thank you, Chairman, thank you, board members.
So you can just explain to us what the hardship is here and why you're seeking relief on the setbacks.
Thank you. Purchased this house approximately 15, 14 months ago. What's the term when you say it's non-conforming legal? Is that right?
Legal
So, yeah, thank you. So the 15-foot setbacks, I never had them in the first place. And so we're asking for a variance to place the HVAC unit on the side of the house that is the most functional place to put it. It's the same side that has the oil tank.
Which side would that be?
That's the west side.
West side?
And the north side, which is the back of the house, has some, in order to get into the crawl space, has some low and wide doors that open so that would prevent it from being placed there. On the east side, there's no clearance at all. Of course, you don't want to put it on the front. So the west side would be the most logical, functional, and aesthetically pleasing. Put that there.
And is it true that the proposed setback to the unit is 7.58 feet? As shown on the plan?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yep, and the corner of the house is already closer than that at 6.75 feet.
Yes,
At-
at a different location.
Yeah, at a different location, so this new unit you're proposing is not making the setback encroachment any closer than it currently is at its closest point.
That's correct.
Other questions from the board? Could you just describe what is the nature of this unit? What kind of a unit is it?
Yeah, it's a split mini, heat pump, produces cold for my wife and heat for me.
Okay,
Same brand we've approved before. Or whatever that's,
it's
it's
a,
not the size. but the
yeah, it's a heat
brand.
pump.
Mitsubishi.
Okay, and this is going to be mounted on the ground.
Correct. On
Now-
a-
now-
Yeah, on a foundation yet to be installed, but yes,
Next to the house,
I'm sorry,
next to the house.
adjacent right up to it, right into it.
So you don't hang it off the house and putting it on a pad next to the house?
Yes, sir.
So the house doesn't have AC right now? That would add AC to it? Or is
This-
you changing
yeah.
the system?
There's no AC to the house at the moment. This is the relief for my beautiful wife Sherilyn to stay cool. And although we do have heat, this is going to be much more efficient.
Any other questions at this time? Is there anyone in the public that would like to offer any comments on this application? Yes, sir, please come up and identify your name and address for the stenographer.
My name is David Pion. I live at 82 Harris Avenue in Warren, just right up the street from Ed.
Okay,
Where the unit is going, the oil tank is in front behind some hedges that you cannot see from the road. The actual, I don't know if you have the diagram
Yep.
of the house. It says 6.75 from the house. The
Yep.
oil tank is right there, so the oil tank is closer to the property line. It's probably about 3.75 away from the property line. This is going to be sitting back on the back side of the house a lot, so you're gonna have more
mhm,
clearance to the property line to.
Then the existing oil tank.
Yes. And I have pictures on my phone that you cannot see it because they're apple batteries.
Yep.
The shrubs on that side of the house where you cannot see on the side.
so you don't have any complaints with regard to,
Thanks at all.
okay? Any other concerns about this application?
No, I just wanted to include people, understood the area, because property lines down there on top of each other.
Yep.
The
Good.
old summer cottages, go way back when.
Thank you for sharing your knowledge of the local area to give us a more complete picture of the property. Thank you. Is there anyone else in the public that would like to comment on this application? Seeing none. Does the board have any further questions for the applicant? You know, is there anything you'd like to add additionally to your case?
Diane and another neighbor, Arthur and Carol Walmsley, also, you got one letter of support from the neighbor just to the west.
Right.
Other letters, if you would like them.
We can enter those into evidence if you'd like to.
Yeah. What's the addresses on those?
Sure.
You have 82 that just got up, right?
82, Mr. Conklin,
94,
and
which is the letter that we have.
Walmsley at 97 Harris.
So we can mark those letters. I think one of them we already have.
Yep.
The other one can be marked as an exhibit. Okay. Anything else you'd like to offer? Is there any further discussion amongst the board? Is someone prepared with a motion?
I'm prepared.
All right.
Let's give it a try. Okay, application 20, I'm making a motion on application 22-34, Edwin T. Arnold Jr., applicant and owner, 96 Harris Avenue, flat map 13E, lot 116, request variance under section 32-77 to an HVAC unit with less than the required side yard setback in an R10 district zone. In going for this variance, I would say we should approve it under the following. The hardship due to the unique characteristics of the subject land and structure. It was noted that the oil tank is, I believe, 3.5 from the setback. And there's also in a different location where the house itself is 6.5. We're asking for a 6.7 relief. So I believe that would fall within that, because there's other entities on that land that are encroaching the same amount, that this would be a hardship not to allow the applicant to put the unit there. There's no hardship there. There's no hardship. The hardship is not in the result of any prior action of the applicant and does not result in any primary desire to realize greater financial gain. The applicant is only looking for relief of adding AC to the house that does not have it now and making the heating more efficient, which has a less efficient system that's running now, and that will replace it. And in granting the variance will not alter the general characteristic of the surrounding area and conforms to the purpose of the intent of the Warren Zoning Ordinance Board and Comprehensive Plan. We have 3 abutters that are in acceptance of this: 82 Harris Ave, 94 Harris Ave, and 97 Harris Ave, which surrounds the property and have nothing against putting the unit in that location. The relief is the least relief necessary, and I believe that covers all the.
Do you want to make any reference to whether it would be more than a mere inconvenience if we were not to grant?
Yes, I believe it would be more than a mere inconvenience if we do not approve this. We're looking to get more efficient, which we need in this day and age, and also add AC, which everybody needs in this comfort of the way the temperatures have been, especially this year.
Okay. Are there any other amendments or conditions on this motion? Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion is passed 5-0. Good luck. Hopefully it's up and running by the next stretch of warm weather.
Thank you all.
Okay. Good evening.
Good luck.
Next, under new business, we have two applications that will be heard together, but there will be separate motions on each. Those applications being number 2224, Blount Realty Company owner, Marcia Blount, the applicant at 461 Water Street, plat map 6. Lots 99, 107, 98, 114, 11, 25, 93, 108, 109, 110, and 111. Request for a dimensional variance under section 3278 to construct an addition that will exceed the maximum required height on a legal non-conforming structure in the waterfront overlay district. And application number 2235, Blount Realty Company owner, Marcia Blount applicant, 461 to 489 Water Street. Plat map 6, lots 99, 107, 98, 114, 11, 25, 93, 108, 109, 110, and 111. For the request for a special use permit under section 3254 and 3257. To amend the existing special use to add an extension to the current roof height of the hall shop in the waterfront overlay district. Ms. Blount, would you like to come forward and just identify yourself for the record and then give us a brief update on these two applications you have filed? We have heard some testimony on part of this before. We've had a site visit to the property. So if you can just give us the overview of these two items.
If I may.
Yes,
We just have a formal motion to combine therefore the facts.
very good. Someone like to make that motion to combine these?
I'll make a motion to combine application 2224 and 2235.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so it's approved. The testimony will pertain to both applications.
Okay, thank you. So I am Marcia Blount, president of Blount Boats. And what we have done is amended the application. That was a part of the previous meeting so that we included all of the 11 contiguous lots in the coverage. And so we were able to derive from that, I think 23% coverage for the addition, which is under the 30%.
So is that correct then, that the only variance you're seeking is with regard to the height of the roof?
That's right. And we are considered legal non-conforming at this point.
Right.
On the heights.
On the height, that your building is legally there, it's existing, it's a non-conforming height. And is your proposal to match the existing non-conforming height?
Yes.
Okay. And just describe for us, how many feet is that over what is allowed, taking into account the 5 feet of freeboard that's allowed because you're in the flood zone?
Well, 46.
So 46 is the proposed height.
46 minus 5.
41, and the requirement is 35,
So it's 41.
6 feet.
Something about.
They're about 6 feet or 6.5 feet of relief is what you're seeking.
Yes.
Okay. So, and then can you just describe the request to modify the existing special use permit that was previously granted by this board?
Yes, so it's not completely clear that we needed a special use permit. But we felt that we should cover that so that we do your grandfather in, but if we are special use perhaps we needed another special use for this extension.
So I think perhaps the term is an amendment to the special use that has already been approved by this board. You have an existing special use to operate a shipyard
Yeah.
on record with this board. And there were certain terms set out on that special use defining the perimeter of the buildings and spaces that were to be used as such. And now you're seeking to continue with the same special use of a shipyard, but is it correct that you're seeking to modify the footprint of the area used for the indoor hull shop?
Yes. So,
Okay, so we've established that there's an existing special use on the property granted by this board, and the current application for special use is to modify that existing special use to change the footprint of the area used for the indoor hull shop.
yes.
So are those the two issues from which you're seeking relief this evening?
Yes.
Okay. Is there other information you'd like to enter into the record? I know we have received various copies of letters from economic development organizations and other agencies speaking to their feeling the need of this expansion and the way in which it affects the town's goals and comprehensive plan. Those have been previously entered into the record. I believe there was a memo from the planning board stating that there were a condition of the planning board's approval that as part of this, they recommended we include modifications to the facade design of the existing office building that is on the property, and that those designs should be in accordance with a previous plan that was submitted to the planning board. Is that your understanding?
Yes.
And you're willing to undertake those modifications?
Yes.
Okay. Any other specific points you want to add for the record?
Yeah, well, it's not only, well, obviously, it's the goal of the state of Rhode Island to become a blue economy, and we are in that space. So our letters of support came from Congress Rhode Island, it came from the Quonset Development Corporation, and it came from the Chamber of Commerce here in the town.
And just again, for the record, could you state what is the specific type of vessel that you're manufacturing in this space that needs to be extended?
Yes, we are manufacturing crew transfer vessels for the wind farms off our shore, probably the entire northeast coast of the United States. These vessels are aluminum catamarans. They have to be built under a covered space, you know, in a heated area. And that is why we need more covered space.
And the covered space is a technical requirement of the type of materials you're using and the processes that are required
Yes,
to make
yes.
these vessels?
Yes, it is. It is, these vessels are class vessels under the American Bureau of Shipping. And there's a requirement that they have to be built under cover.
Any other specific facts you'd like to enter in at this time? Okay, board members, we've been on a site visit. We've seen the existing facility, and the demarcation of the proposed expansion was marked for us when we were on the site. Do we have any specific questions for the applicant with regard to the 6.5-ish feet of extension for the variance or the modification to the terms of the special use to provide more square footage of indoor ship construction area?
I think that's well understood. We had, what was the lot coverage? Well, 22% and 30% is allowed?
So 30% was allowed in this zone, and your testimony is that based on the merged lot, which I will say that the decision of this board recognized that the lots were merged for this common use at the previous decision. So that has already been memorialized by the board that all of these lots can be counted as part of the same use for the purposes of computing lot coverage.
So do we, is it dimensional use? Variance, excuse me,
It's only the height of the building.
it's really only the height of the building.
So that's 6.5 feet. During that site visit, you explained that it is required because you have a runway that runs through the existing building that needed to be continued through that new space. Is that your contention that that 6.5 feet of elevation is required to continue that same
Yes,
system that you had in place?
exactly.
Can you help us understand that a little bit more?
Exactly. So one of the, when you see a boat in the water, it doesn't look that high, but actually, there's, from the waterline down, there's this substantial amount of boat under the water. So, if you were to come and look at, our whole shop now, we have the whole of the vessel built, so we need, as much height as possible to build as much as we can. These vessels are actually too high to actually put the pilot house on. So our pilot houses are being built separately and will go on after, when the vessel gets pulled out to the rooftop. So clearly to build, we need the height to be able to build efficiently to hit the level that we can finish. before
And as
take
we-
that side.
And so as I think was pointed out in the site visit, is it true that there is an overhead crane system in the
Yes,
existing
the gantry-
building?
There's a gantry crane system that we absolutely need for this kind of great material.
And that gantry crane, the rails for that need to remain at the same elevation in order for the crane to
Exactly, it
function.
will just extend, there's a railroad track, in the concrete, on the floor, which will be extended. And so what we do is we do move these vessels, can move on parts, throughout the building. When we're building them, we usually take the parts out and then we build up lots of wood to support them. But then we take that down, put them on carts, and then use the railroad system to take them out.
And so the height that's matching the existing
It's
building,
matching the existing gantry crane, we will be adding 2 more gantry
Yeah.
cranes.
and that crane must be on a level platform,
yes,
thus the need to
yes.
match the height, as we were shown during the site visit. Okay. Are there other specific questions before we go to the public comment? Okay, you want to have a seat for a moment? Is there anyone in the public that would like to offer an input? Yes, sir. If you could please identify yourself for the record and state your position.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Attorney Matthew Landry, on behalf of Jane McDougal, 500 Water Street. She's a direct abutter to the Blount facility and lives across the street. I know she's testified, excuse me, in front of this board on a number of occasions, particularly in matters with regard to the Blount facility. I'm
And
here
is
to
it,
just-
is it true that your client was present at the site visit that was conducted?
Yes, she was.
Oh, just wanted to make sure we had that on the record.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm here to present an objection to the addition that's being proposed for the site, and I'm going to limit my comments to 3 specific legal issues. One of them pertaining to the lot coverage issue, and I do have great respect for the decision and the work that this board did a couple of years ago in regards to the tent structure. But I think there's a need for some clarity in regards to how that decision was applied and the applicability of a footnote in the dimensional regulations that was used in that decision, because it has nothing to do with lot coverage. So I'll go into that a bit more. We also don't believe the applicant has entered into the record enough or sufficient evidence in regards to the standards for relief under 32-26 with regard to the height variance that's being requested. And perhaps a technical error that I would just like to bring to the board's attention is that when this application was initially submitted, they only submitted it for the lot that the addition would be proposed, not all the lots, as you know. The applicant submitted its application to include all the lots it suggests it owns and is part of the Blount shipyard, shipping facility. However, a number of those lots are owned by another legal entity called the Water Street Dock Company. They're not a named applicant on this application, nor do they sign off on the application. They're also not one of the parties that is mentioned in the legal notice for this application. It's my understanding that anyone with a legal interest in property that is being proposed for development or it comes on an application for a special use permit or variance needs to be named in the application. They've named lots that Water Street Dock Company owns, and they have not been named applicants to this application. So on that ground alone, I think the application is effective.
I would just add, I think in the previous decision, that was addressed. And the standard this board set was that regardless of ownership or diversity of ownership, they shall all be considered merged for the purposes of zoning.
Understood. Okay, thank you. Well, in regards to the variance criteria, we feel that there's insufficient evidence to support the standards that are outlined in your zoning ordinance. There's a lot of suggestion that this is purely for financial gain. Now, we're sensitive to the fact that it's a community business, has a lot of respect by members of this community, but that in itself is not a basis for relief, particularly when there's financial gain to be had with respect to that element.
I would just point out that in the past, we've discussed this issue extensively. And it's a standard that it's not for greater financial gain. And we understand that any business, anytime they invest in their business, expects some degree of financial gain. And it's up to the board to determine whether this is being done solely for greater financial gain, or if this would result in financial gain that is consistent with business practices.
Understood, Mr. Chair, thank you. WAMP has been provided with an opportunity for grant money contracts to build these boats for offshore wind. It's a very noble cause, very respectable cause. But to realize the full extent and satisfy the terms of grants in contracts that they are seeking to engage in, the applicant suggests that it needs more room to do so. And the grants do require the ability to expand and meet zoning relief in order to recognize the full extent of these contracts and fulfill their obligations in these contracts, they need zoning relief. Now, 3226 requires that the applicant establish that it's not due to any prior action of the applicant and doesn't result primarily from the desire to realize greater financial gain. The applicant is voluntarily taking on these contracts and these grants with full knowledge of the limitations of its property and the capacity to fill those obligations. These are new contracts. These aren't contracts for its existing business or its existing site. It's voluntarily entering into those contracts, which in turn is requiring the zoning relief that's being requested. If they don't take on those grants and don't take on these contracts, they don't need the relief. That's important.
And I think we, in previous cases, we've also discussed this matter, that it's usual and customary in the practice of running a business, particularly this type of business, that contracts change over time. It's not this particular business, the uniqueness that it's not manufacturing one set item, like one piece of equipment or one part to something. Each vessel or each class of vessel is a unique project to the business, and by the very nature of it, each contract is distinct, and the applicant would have no way of knowing what future contracts would be coming their way. And it's perfectly typical of this industry. We have discussed this. We've had testimony about the nature of their business in the past when they have come before us. And other businesses in town have dealt with the same things when they take on new projects or new contracts. The terms of the manufacture and execution of those contracts have necessitated alterations to their facilities to accommodate that. So we don't find it at all out of character with the nature of their business.
I respect the comments, Mr. Chair. I would just say that there's plenty of other uses for this property that don't require zoning. There's a number of other uses that clients have on the property that are very successful, they're reasonable uses, and none of them require zoning relief, or they may have already gotten the relief that they needed in the past. This particular product that they're seeking to produce requires zoning relief. So why not seek out an opportunity that doesn't require this type of zoning relief? I think the proposal before you, the application that's being presented is what needs to be ruled upon. And the fact that this contract came into Blount's hands and they're voluntarily taking it on, they're voluntarily assuming that they can fulfill their obligations, but they need zoning relief. That's a self-imposed hardship. They're entering into an agreement, whether or not things change and different contracts come along, some things are legal, some things are not under zoning. They're voluntarily entering into this on the condition that they can get the zoning relief that is needed, including the grant money that is involved in this. And I feel from a legal position, they're putting themselves in a position to need the zoning relief because they're engaging in an activity that requires it. That is a self-imposed hardship.
So your legal position is that they should limit themselves to bagging soup and making lobster rolls
Oh, there's plenty of permissible uses for that site. They're not limited to one particular use, and it's not for us to decide what use is appropriate, but it is appropriate to consider whether or not the request for zoning presents a hardship if that hardship is self-imposed. It's self-imposed in this case because they're electing to do something that is not allowed.
So
under zoning.
they can fulfill the responsibility of the contract if they do one at a time. This is actually creating more efficiencies, more productivity, because the height of the building is already there and able to equip the building of one vessel. Well, this is actually increasing that productivity so that they can be more efficient in doing what they're doing. So it's not exactly recreating a space or creating a new space. It's expanding an existing space to allow two vessels to be built.
Right, so that turns into, is it the least relief necessary if they can still affect the use without the request of zoning relief? So that takes me to my next
It's a
point.
business decision within the company's organization. And this is an option for them to apply for.
Sure,
So
is it a hardship when you can still facilitate the use and make money into the contract, but they choose to do so by increasing productivity?
if they lose the contract because they're not efficient in building two, then yes, actually it is a hardship.
Well, to
And in
them,
this ever-changing world that we live in, different types of boats need to be built
And
in
you
order to
can't-
support.
And you also can't have it both ways. It can't be a self-imposed hardship because they can't satisfy the contract with their current facilities and be able to satisfy the contract with their current facilities and be looking for this expansion as businesses.
the expansion of this building is not a contingency to the contract. They can still get the contract without expanding the building. They're choosing to expand the building to increase productivity. So. the issue
So
here
is it
that
a
they're-
self-imposed hardship or not?
It absolutely is, because they're creating the need for zoning relief on their own volition. It's not a.
But you said the acceptance of the contract was what was making this zoning relief necessary. But of your own admission, they can now satisfy that contract by building one boat at a time.
Well, that was what was suggested by one of the members, is that this contract is to build boats. I'm not aware, and please correct me if I'm wrong, there's no contractual requirement to seek zoning to facilitate that purpose. The fact that they are seeking to build two at a time is a personal productivity and business preference. I understand the business side point, but the fact that they're choosing to do it that way is self-imposed and requires zoning, whereas they could do this without even requesting zoning relief. So the question becomes, is it the least relief necessary? Well, if there's testimony in the record that they could do this in an admission or recognition from the board that they could do this without the addition, then how is it the least relief necessary?
Well, it's a very small addition, that's why. It's not a big deal. The roof line's already there and it's only a few more feet.
I think
It's a significantly large
Yeah.
building that's being added to an existing building that's already a legal non-conforming structure.
Yeah, so I think the issue before us is the least amount of relief to accomplish the applicant's stated goal. And the applicant's stated goal is to build multiple boats at the same time. So it is incumbent upon us to determine what is the least amount of relief necessary to allow the applicant to facilitate building multiple boats at the same time. That's the stated goal they came to us with.
And I don't believe that the applicant has put in enough evidence to suggest that a smaller building would be sufficient. I think they're doing this out of preference and business requests, but there's no evidence to suggest that even in addition, even if they needed it,
that it needs to be the same height as the other building, that needs to be the same, like that they need the fabrication.
I think we
area.
have evidence in the record of the crane system that's in place and the physical properties of that. We observed it during the site visit, that the crane system cannot operate on two different planes. It must be a continuous plane. Therefore, it must be the same height as existing. We saw that. We went on the site visit. It was very clear that that piece of equipment cannot operate at two different levels. So in order to accomplish the stated goal of building multiple vessels, they need to employ that crane system, and the crane system must operate on a level platform. So I think that's been made extremely clear.
One of the other elements is that this will amount to more than a mere inconvenience. The zoning ordinance defines more than a mere inconvenience as the applicant cannot recognize any other reasonable alternative use for a legally permitted use on the property. That's a finding this board needs to make. I think it's clear that the Blounts have a number of other opportunities to recognize on this property that are legally permissible uses. I don't see enough evidence in this record to suggest that there's no other reasonable alternative to enjoy a legally permissible use on this property.
Well, I think we may be straying into the territory of the use variance, which is not what's on the table here.
This standard is a new dimensional use, dimensional variance standard of your ordinance.
Because we're not-
Defining.
We're not
It is?
introducing a different use. This use already exists on the property.
I understand. One of the findings the board needs to make at the end of the findings of the dimensional variance criteria, whether or not absent the relief, it would amount to more than a mere inconvenience. The ordinance and the state enabling act goes on to define what more than a mere inconvenience means. And that's that there is no other reasonable alternative to enjoy a legally permitted use on the property.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yeah.
I was again, I'll recommend, for the name of the council, want to project, but on the record, it's noted and proceed with the application. Which is going to
Thank you. In granting a dimensional variance, the zoning board of review shall, in addition to the above general standards, require that evidence be entered into the record of the proceedings showing that the hardship that will be suffered by the owner of the subject property if the dimensional variance is not granted shall amount to more than a mere inconvenience. That shall mean that there is no other reasonable alternative to enjoy legally permitted beneficial use of one's property. I don't think there's any evidence in the record to suggest that they cannot recognize any reasonable alternative legally permissible use on the property. That's evident by all the uses that do exist on the property. That's a standard in 32.26 and 32.28, and is also in the zoning enabling act. And that's a standard that this board needs to make a finding on, and that the applicant is required to establish on the record.
And I think under the circumstances, as we've discussed before, the applicant's legally acceptable and permitted goal for putting this project before us to begin with is to be able to build two boats at the same time in this facility. There is no other legally permitted reasonable alternative, because you would have to build another hull shop.
Well, it's not limited to the use that they're asking. The ordinance says that there's no other reasonable alternative to enjoy any legally permissible. use.
No, it
Not
says to-
not the specific use that they're suggesting. So it's not limited to a reasonable alternative use for the use that they're suggesting. It's any legally permissible use on the property. There's no reasonable alternative.
I would disagree with that reading, because that would mean that anyone who comes to us with a variance request for a deck would have to prove to us that there is no way that they could tear down their house and build a new one with a deck within variance setbacks. That's an unreasonable reading of the code.
Well, they would still, yeah, they can seek relief to build a house, but if a house is zoned only for a house, then there may be a hardship because you can't build another house. The question here is whether or not there's another legal permissible use that's alternative to what's being proposed without the relief.
But the use that's being proposed is the current use. It's the same use. They're not seeking an alternative use. This is the use. It's a haul shop now. The use that's being proposed is a haul shop.
Mr. Chair, and once again, I won't go back and forth about what the meaning. I'm quickly looking up one period of please, but he's talking about no other reasonable alternative to me, quote, when the liberal enforcement of the pertinent ordinance provides for including full enjoyment, like this interpretation of the clause, not exactly what he's saying. They interpret that language to mean pool enjoyment. So this board knows American means is stick your guns in it. You've addressed these things in the past and say, this can note it and move on.
Other objections?
Yeah, just in regards to the lot coverage issue, now, I know that there was a decision that this board had made in 2016. And I know the applicant amended its application to include all the lots that it thinks are relevant in order to avoid the need for requests for lot coverage variance. Otherwise, they would be well over the lot coverage that's permissible on the property without including those lots. And that's what was initially submitted to the town. Now, my reading of that decision, and I read the minutes and both remand decisions, the Superior Court at the time had remanded it back to the zoning board to make a determination in regards to this merger issue with all the lots. And it asked it to specifically apply the provision of the zoning ordinance that deals with merger. Article 14, section 3282 of the ordinance. That section, as it is in every ordinance in the state, deals with substandard lots of record. The only way lots merge into one another is by law in your ordinance or any exceptions that is set forth in your ordinance. These are not all substandard lots of record. They cannot automatically merge into conforming lots, do not merge into other conforming lots. The idea is for a substandard lot to merge into a lot that is more conforming. And I would say some of the lots that are included are not conforming and may have merged under that provision. But in the remand decision that this board issued that the applicant relies on, Article 14 was never referenced, it was never addressed, and there's no suggestion that any of these lots are properly merged under Article 14. And this expansion of this footnote in the dimensional regulations, I do have copies of it, if you'd like to follow along. That case involved a tent structure on the property that you're all familiar with. They needed rear setback relief, they needed side yard setback relief, and they needed a height variance in that case, the 2016 decision that's referenced. In that case, the board made a decision that they're merged under footnote 2 of the dimensional regulations. Footnote 2 is relief from side yard width setbacks, rear yard setbacks, and side yard setbacks in the ordinance. It has nothing to do with building lot coverage, nothing at all. You look at the dimensional regulations of 32-78 under rear yard setbacks, it says asterisk C note 2. Under maximum side yard width, it says C note 2. Under building coverage of lot, it's 30%, and there's no asterisk, there's no reference to lot 2. What note 2 says minimum rear yard depth and minimum side yard width may be decreased to 0, where adjacent lots or land of parcels are combined for the purpose of simultaneous development of a large structure, interconnected structures that are part of the planned integrated commercial industrial development. Now, I don't disagree with that. The board's decision allowed a 0-yard setback based on that provision, and I don't disagree with that. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. There's absolutely no mention in the decision that the applicant relies on or in the ordinance that supports note 2 also applies to lot coverage. There's no way to get around the lot coverage issue unless you're subject to Article 14, the merger provision for substandard lots that the judge asked the board to address in its remand, and it neglected to do so. In this expansion of note 2 suddenly to lot coverage, there's no suggestion that that was the board's intent at the time, because lot coverage wasn't an issue in that case as far as I could read that decision. It only applied to side yard setbacks, the rear setbacks. Obviously, the height was allowed in that decision, but there is no expansion of that footnote, nor should there have been, to apply to lot coverage that the applicant is now relying on that decision to say, and I'm respectful to historic decisions of the board, and I understand it's probably a legal issue, a legal interpretation issue. But the suggestion that that note is somehow applicable to lot coverage, it's nowhere in the dimensional regulations. The actual merger doctrine was never addressed in that decision. The judge asked it to be, it was never, it's still an open issue. And I don't know the proper answer to that, but my reading of this ordinance is that note 2 does not apply to lot coverage.
And that decision that the applicant relies on was applicable only to the side yard setbacks and rear setbacks and not lot coverage. So I would respectfully offer our objection to any interpretation that applies that to lot coverage and suggest that this applicant needs to apply for a lot coverage variance as appropriate. And if it does want to consider these as all one contiguous lot for purposes of merger, then it can submit a land development plan and merge the lots as one and go forth and be allowed to do what it chooses to do and avoid a lot of these issues. But that's not the application that's before the board. And I would suggest that this board at least make a finding in that regard. That's really what I would ask, is to address whether their decision in 2016 expanded the definition to include lot coverage when it's not listed in the ordinance, and how Article 14, the merger provision of the ordinance, is applicable to this case, and whether all the lots that are included on this application are truly merged because they're substandard or some other reason. I think there needs to be a finding respectfully on that issue. And I think it's a big issue because there's continued expansion on this property. And if the interpretation is that that footnote applies to lot coverage, then the applicant can increase lot coverage another 10% of what's already there. That's excessive. That's quite a bit of lot coverage. And I know tax assessor records are used for different purposes, but for all legal purposes, these are separate and distinct lots. And the question of zoning and whether or not this provision of footnote 2 incorporates all those lots as merged for future applications is a question I think that still needs to be addressed.
Well, I will only say to that we stand by our determination of our previous decision, and that by decree of the board, it was determined that these lots are to be treated as merged, and whether they were treated as merged for setbacks or any other purpose, once we decided they're merged, they're now one lot. So coverage applies to the lot, and the lot, as considered by this board, is now the merged group of land that's there. So whether or not it was specifically stated it applied to lot coverage, it was determined that the lots are merged. So once we have declared them merged, that would now act as though it were one lot.
And I respect that, Mr. Chair, and I understand the language in the decision. I would just suggest that in reading that decision, there's no mention at all about the lot coverage. It's never mentioned. And my reading of that footnote 2, as it was applied correctly. I agree with the board's decision there that it applied to the side yard setbacks that was issued and the footnote was cited. That footnote doesn't even mention lot coverage at all. So my question to the board would be, did the board intend to include lot coverage as part of that when it's not mentioned?
You want me to answer that? Because I wrote the decision.
I would like the board to make a finding on that, and if that's the finding, then I respect that, but I would just offer respectfully that it was unclear to me whether lot coverage is included, particularly because lot coverage isn't mentioned in that footnote. It's limited in scope, and that remand decision from the court suggested merger under Article 14, which is the appropriate doctrine. That was never addressed. So I think those are two glaring issues that still need to be addressed.
Well, we may be able to make a finding of that relating to that.
Thank you for your time, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
I think my client is, if you would like to speak.
Okay, yeah, Mr. McDougal, if you'd like to provide testimony.
Good evening, I have some questions.
Yep, just once again, identify yourself and address, please.
Jane McDougal, 500 Water Street in Warren.
And you're in a butter to the applicant.
Yes, I am. I'm right across the street from Lot 108.
Okay.
Couple of the questions that I have, the testimony that I heard here tonight. At one time, Masha, at the last meeting, I guess, had said that they have a contract for 4 boats to be completed in 2023 and 24.
We can ask her to confirm that when she comes back up.
Okay, so I have reason to believe that that might have changed, as someone here said. Contracts change, contracts are altered, and they come and they go, and something you think you might have as a contract doesn't work out. And I have reason to believe that the contract for 4 boats that Marcia had stated they have may not any longer be what the current contract states.
We can ask her to clarify the number of votes in the terms of the current contract.
Okay. And also, the issue of freeboard, the height of the building.
Yep.
We all know that the height of the proposed addition is 46.5 feet from the ground. And I heard it stated that the permission that you're asking for, or the height that you're asking for, is 41.5 feet.
So it's a difference that they're asking for a difference of 6.5 feet above what is allowed, taking into account the allowable 5 feet because of the flood zone.
Because of freeboard,
Yeah, freeboard
5 feet of freeboard.
in the flood zone.
And it's my understanding that you can't have freeboard unless you build the building to the BFE, which is the base flood elevation. And then the freeboard is in addition to the BFE. Now, if the building's being built on the ground, there is no BFE. I realize the addition's going to match the building that is flat on the ground, but there is no BFE, so therefore I don't believe you can have any freeboard. That's just a technical thing. The building, the height of the building is still going to be 46.5 feet. I don't care how you slice it. But in your decision, I think it should say that it's 46.5 feet high. Period.
We may need to ask for a technical clarification on the freeboard definition.
Okay, that's fine. And also, Masha has stated many times that you need to have covered space in order to work on this aluminum that they make the boats out of. And I would like to know what the frames are that are being built outside on the slab to the south of the small hull building. And this has been, they've been cut and it sounds like grinding, cutting, and whatever else they had to do to put them together. There are several of them. They look like some sort of a frame for the hull. I assume that they're aluminum and they're being left outside.
Okay, so we can ask her to
So-
clarify if there are certain phases of the process that can occur outdoors versus indoors and ask for an explanation to define that.
Right. At the first meeting, maybe it was the planning board meeting, Masha had stated that the door on the front of the whole building that faces the office was going to be removed. And basically the front of the building was going to be moved up the desired amount of feet. And then the door was going to be put back on. But then at the site visit, it was said that there were going to be 2 doors on the sides of the buildings near the end where the addition is. So I wondered if that original plan to have the door facing the office is still in part of the plan. Because
So
it didn't seem so.
Yeah, so I don't know that the position of the door is relevant to the zoning board because wherever the door goes does not affect any provision that they're asking for relief on. The position of the door is a function of their business operations. It's nothing we would govern.
Well, it was something that had been discussed, had been put on the record, that it was going to be moved and used again. And I remember even asking what the height of the door was, but Masha wasn't sure what it was. And so then it seemed that testimony had changed and that there was not going to be a door there. And I just wondered if they were just going to go with the 2 side doors now, which had not originally been mentioned.
If you like, we can ask her that, but again, it would have no bearing on the relief they're asking for, the size of the doors or where they're going.
It's just a question that I have. And I would just like to ask, there was, Blount had made a promotional, I guess, something to bring more business to the yard and had, excuse me, had described the buildings that they have, the equipment that they have, and their capabilities. And The primary production facility, which would be the large shed that we've been talking about, and the addition that's needed, states that it was 200 feet by 60. And it was a 200 by 60 shed and had a 200 by 40.5 build capacity. So that leads me to believe that you could build one 200-foot boat. You can build it the length of the building, but you need room on the sides. It'd only be 40.5 feet wide, whereas the building is 60 feet wide. So that tells me that they needed 10 feet on each side of the boat in order to access the boat and to work on it. So now they're talking about having 200-foot boats, but they won't fit because they need to get in between the stern of one and the bow of the other. But if you have this room on the sides, you could build a 200-foot boat and that has that build capacity.
Yeah, we have-
Why can't they put 200?
So we have no way of knowing what type of vessel that's referring to or what their business operations are, and it's not for this board to dictate the means and methods of how they construct their vessels. They are the experts in that, and they are telling us what they need for certain vessels that they are now proposing to construct. So again, whatever that advertising refers to, I cannot say.
They wrote it.
Yeah, well, I don't know what that refers to.
Well, they simply said they have a 200-foot by 40.5-foot build capacity in that whole building.
Fine.
So now they want to build 2 100-foot boats, but they can't do it.
Well,
They need an addition.
we've heard the testimony that the type of boats they're building can't work in that capacity simultaneously. We can have them explain that again when they come back up, but that's the testimony they've presented, that whatever that capacity is that's existing, the way in which these types of boats have to be built don't fit in that capacity.
Okay. And it would seem that it would at least be close. Maybe they would need a little extra room to get around the boats, but do they really need 45 feet of extra room to get around the boats? Supposedly, this is what the addition is for.
Mr. McDougall, again, to echo what the Mr. Chair said, we're not in the this board is just deciding, being asked to decide what's being stated in the petitions, not to tell Blount how to build their boats. They're the experts. The advertisement I found, that you found that you're reading from, there's no information or background from it. I understand.
Would you like a copy?
I don't think it's relevant. I mean, from my own perspective, Mr. Chair, I question the relevance of this online advertisement as to how this affects the petitions before us.
Yeah, it doesn't specifically cite these specific types of vessels that they're currently asking for. It sounds generic in its description, so I don't think it's relevant to this specific application.
Mhm. Okay. And when they applied to Rhode Island Commerce Commission for $75,000 to make their site shovel ready, they used the same description. Same wording, the same description, that they have the capability of a 200-foot by 40.5-foot build.
And that may be a fact, right? They have that. I mean, that could be
So-
factual, that is what currently exists.
So have they justified the 45-foot need, the need for a 45-foot addition?
Based on the testimony that we've heard and what we observed there, they described the build process needing more length because of the way they were standing up these things and rotating them. There was a whole set of circumstances that were outlined to their expertise on how these things have to be constructed and why it would not fit within that existing build area. I don't think anyone on this board has the expertise to judge the veracity of that statement. We need to take what we saw at the shop into consideration, but I don't think anyone here can determine, is there a different way of constructing those boats? We don't have that level of expertise.
Okay. And also, have you considered any alternatives for using the property that would not need a 45-foot addition to the building? I mean,
We don't make
contracts
any-
come and contracts go.
Yeah, they have identified
This one,
this facility as the size of facility on this site that is the one they would expand. They have not identified any other existing structure on the facility that would be of suitable size. We can ask them, again, if there is another structure already existing, that they could put these boats in if it met the height and width and depth requirements. You can ask that, but to this point, and on the site visit, nothing was pointed out as an existing facility that would satisfy those requirements.
Such as renting another facility where they could do fabricating or,
But that's not the stated goal of this application. The stated goal of this application is to manufacture these boats on their facility on Water Street.
And how about using the tent that isn't being used? It's 150 feet long. You could at least put one boat in it at some time in the process.
We heard testimony before about the tent was for a specific type of vessel that they were building at the time the tent was constructed.
A CTV.
The current,
That's what the tent was for, to build
the tent,
CTVs.
when the tent was presented, it was for a particular type of boat. It is not the same boat that they are building now. And according to their expertise, the type of boat they are building now needs more permanent sort of interior cover.
So does this mean that every time Blount gets a new contract, they're going to need a different facility?
We don't know.
Possibly.
Potentially, it's the nature of a business. If I hire more people in my office, I might need to add more desks. And when that project is over, I might fire those people and have fewer desks in my office. Businesses change and they have to adapt as their needs change.
The other thing, Mr. Chair, I'll note too, is that what Blount is proposing to do is to build boats, and Blount Boats builds boats. This is not a petition, for example, a contract with SpaceX to build rocket fuselages, which would be a whole other can of worms. As discussed, they're building, there's already an existing structure. There's already been fabrication of boats going on at this site. So I think I know there's been a lot of discussion about, Blount's getting a contract to do this, to do that. They want to try to expand. They're in the business of building boats, and what they've proposed to us and what they are arguing is that this is the least relief necessary to continue that boat building operation.
If you'd like me to cite other examples of other shipyards that have had to modify their shipyards based on contracts, I could do that.
Businesses often have to modify their business or do something else, but they don't always have to go to the town or the authority, zoning, whatever, to constantly seek a different thing.
Well, I think your definition of constantly versus others constantly.
6 years ago, I think, last time they were here, is that correct?
They were here in 2020, but they dropped that application.
Oh. Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
I think the last time you were here, one of the board members asked why you were fighting this. A lot of these reasons are really being pulled out of the woods
There's
here.
a lot of technical reasons, but I wanted to ask the question to your point. Could you explain what is the detriment that this development would cause to you and your property? Why is this detrimental to you?
Well, and understanding that you are in a butter to the property, but the Blount property is a long street and you live way far away from where this building is where the addition is being put on, and you're not even going to be able to see it from your house.
Oh, well, because there always seems to be another piece being added. For instance, the tents. They needed the tents when they were building the first CTVs. The first CTV, to their credit, they did the first one in the United States. They built it. That would never be taken away from them. They built the CTV. They needed the tent because they had to have more coverage. They had multiple boats to build. They had 3 at the time, contracts for 3. And that was the proposal. And they had to have a tent in addition to the buildings that they already have.
With all due respect, the question that was asked is, how would it be a detriment to you and your property?
Yes, well, because there always seems to be another thing added.
But
But
what
what's
is
the detriment to you and your
If they
property?
keep
on this right
expanding.
now? That's what we're asking.
Traffic,
So those are two completely new issues. We've heard no testimony about up until this point. So your concern is that this expansion is going to cause additional noise and additional traffic.
Yes.
So are there other specific concerns? Because that's what we want to hear is what are the specific concerns? So then we can ask the applicant how those are being addressed. Just citing legal standards of questioning the technicality of whether something falls under a certain statute, that's fine, but we'd like to know what are the issues so that if we have a motion, we may be able to put conditions on that motion to address the things you're concerned about.
And I have a concern that because this application includes all the lots, that there could then be the next addition when they need something else to build in.
Yeah, and so we can only,
Across the street
yeah.
from my house.
so we can only consider this individual application and what they're asking for. What may happen a year from now, 10 years, who knows how long, we would have to be considered at the time of that individual application. We cannot speculate on what may or may not.
I understand that. You asked me what I was concerned
Yeah,
about.
well, that's not a concern we can address.
Well, wouldn't you think that if they can make the building 45 feet longer or 46.5 feet high, and it's all even, it's more enclosed, there's less work outside, it's less noise for you.
If that-
It's more efficient for them and it's less disturbance for anybody, and it's behind some other buildings anyway. I mean, it's, you know, we're happy to listen to any complaints and concerns that you would have, but you've been here for 15 minutes. And he was a half an hour or 20 minutes, and there's been nothing.
Well, actually, I got up to ask those questions.
Okay.
So are there other specific, so we can't address what might happen in the future. So you have a concern about traffic generated by this proposed addition, and you have a concern about noise. Are there other specific concerns that you think will be detrimental based on what they're asking for?
No, not with this particular.
Okay, that's the only application that we can speak about is this particular.
Yes.
So those are the two. We're going to ask the applicant how they're addressing traffic and noise.
So if you could ask the questions about covered space,
We're
it
gonna,
has to be done,
we're going to ask that.
you know, outside or inside, because we've been told that they have to have buildings in order to build these boats because of the only, so I'd like to know about that. And I would like very much to know about the contract, if the contract is still for 4 boats, or if that has changed.
Okay, we're going to ask about the contract.
And I disagree.
What's the
with
relevance
idea
of the contract?
Of the 3 boats.
Well, we've decided that the contract is requiring if certain boats have to be built within a certain time frame, and they need the extra space to be able to accommodate that number of boats in the time frame specified by the contract. So we'll ask the question.
All right, so I think we should allow the applicant to
Yeah.
come up and
The
answer
applicant
those
will come
questions.
back and we can go through the questions one at a time.
Thank you very much.
So Ms. Blount, if you'd like to retake the podium. So the first question is, could you please clarify the quantity of boats and the time frame in which these boats are to be constructed?
All right, so we have, with the same client, we have 2 signed contracts, and those contracts are being, those vessels are being built in the house. At the same time, we signed the contracts, we signed letters of intent with swap deposits. Because, you know, we signed the contracts in 2021. And these boats are being delivered 23, 24. And there have been, and they're sequential. And clearly facing there's wage pressure and material inflation pressure. So the client and ourselves decided that we would not go into a fixed contract amount for the 34 boats. So instead of doing that, we had substantial slot deposits. So they have those slot deposits. We have the money for the slot deposits for the 34th boat. And we have a letter of intent that we will go into contract negotiations, which we are doing now. And part of what was happening with the increases in material and labor is that we are doing bifurcating contracts. We're doing a sort of short procurement contract to lock in the prices of engines, gensets, and aluminum, because those prices, had been so erratic. And then we lock that in, so we actually had 2 contracts and then go into a full-fledged contract. So we are now in the negotiations we have the slot deposits and the letter of intent, and that we will go into negotiations for those 3rd and 4th vessels.
So the time frame in which the boats are to be built is proposed to be done in a way that is appropriate for your client's desire of the budget to complete these boats and the time frame in which they want to take delivery of these boats, taking into account economic factors and other considerations that are reasonable and customary.
That's right. And it is not only going to be for vessels. There are many vessels that need to be constructed, and we are one of the few shipyards in Rhode Island. There is a need for almost a requirement for these developers to put in local content. We are the sort of the poster child for local content. So we are, obviously, you have the wind farm developers, and then you have the operators who have the contracts with us. But we are in discussions with the actual developers, wanting to know, because of our reputation for building these boats, the fact that we are local content, they want to know our schedule for building boats. And we're talking about, sort of some of these RFIs, RFPs that are coming out with these bids, that are 6 to 8 boats, which would mean we would just continually build. So it's not 2 contracts, 4 contracts. We're literally going to go into a whole sequence of building.
So the intent of this project is not only to satisfy the current contracts you have, but your intent is to provide capacity to continue developing this channel of your business.
Yes.
So it's not specifically for just these boats and then you're done using it and that need goes away. Your business model shows an ongoing need for this capacity.
Yes.
And that is why you sought this expansion to fulfill that goal.
Exactly.
All right, so I think we've determined that the current number of boats is 4 and that the intent is to continue building more of these boats, and the expansion capacity is to accommodate both the current orders and orders that you will be negotiating.
Yes.
Okay, so I think that answers that point. Can you describe if there are parts of the construction that can happen outdoors versus parts that can happen indoors, and what is the difference between those?
So we're in a good weather right now, and we do not have the covered space. We would love to have everything under covered space. We don't have the covered space. So we are working under the tent as well. We've got some bulkheads done there, which are partially sheltered. We have on the slab, we did set something up to be able to work on those. So we're building all the parts, ring frames, bulkheads, and these vessels are a little different. They are built, their skin are actually stir welded panels. There's panels, and they were sent from Sweden to Alabama back to us, and they are welded panels. So we've gotten panels, about this, bigger than that you can see that we have to cut a certain way to lock into the frames of the vessel.
And did we see those panels and frames when we were at the site?
Yes. Well, what you saw in the large hull shop were the ring frames and the bulkheads. Those are now set up, and you can see the hull itself in the west end of the hull shop. It literally looks like a cavern, but it's not skinned yet. So in the tent, we have a lot of the skin, but it has to be prepared. So that was a covered space we have. And then obviously on the slab, we were doing our best just to get things done in the summer, in the good weather. but clearly we need everything covered.
So is there a temperature requirement for this work so that
Yeah.
at certain times of
Yes.
year, the
Yes.
temperature outdoors would not
Right.
be permissible in order to do this work to meet the
Exactly,
specs?
well done. Clearly, they all need to be, they can take some rain, but, you know, they can't take ice and snow. So we are going to have to do something, you know, when we get, you know, out of the fall to protect everything. Probably bring everything into the large home shop.
All right, and so could you explain again the amount of space required for the way these have to be stood up, assembled? The
Yes.
fact that, explain again the gantry crane and why it needs to be at the same elevation, if you could go through that one more time, please.
That's right. So when you came on the site visit and you entered the host shop, you saw we were building modularly. And right in front of you was the bow mod. I don't know if you saw, the bow of a catamaran it has to be built with much more strength because it's going to hit against the turbine than the rest of the hull. So we had a jig, a separate jig for the bow mod
Mhm.
that was being built in front of the boat, and it was so heavy, you know, that it had, obviously it has to get lifted up, flipped around, and then attached to the hull.
So the boat doesn't just stay in one position
it-
during its process. It
Yes.
needs to change and move as it's being
Yeah,
built.
exactly, and what you saw on the north side, that sort of the elongated structure was what we call the wet deck, which was the middle deck of the catamaran, which was from that north side, it was lifted up to the back. And then all the frames were put on it, but we still have the bow mod jig in front. So we need actually space for a hull, a bow mod, you know, a hull, a bow mod, space for a jig. And so we need as much space as we can to spread out, to work around and have the jigs in
So is it your testimony that based on the components and compartments in which this vessel is manufactured, the amount of space you are seeking for this hull shop is the least amount necessary to allow you to maneuver these pieces and to work around them?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, just identify yourself for the record. Yes.
One thing she did mention is there's also a lot of laydown space for parts that are going to be attached to the boat. So right now we have a lot of ring frames and things that are just lined up in the shop where a boat would be. But we need that space for setting aside the parts that are going to be attached.
And I think we saw that when we were there, that there were not only hull sections being assembled, but there were also materials sort of being staged for the next phase of the construction. So understanding those spatial requirements is your testimony that the amount of space you're requesting is the least amount necessary to accommodate the construction process of these vessels. And just with regard to the height, again, can you explain the
Yes,
need for the
height,
crane
so
to
we-
operate at the same
Yes, we
elevation?
have gantry set up because obviously we're moving materials, you know, sort of through the space, you know, up and through the space as needed. Clearly, the gantry cranes are used to move, you know, not only separate pieces, but the modules, you know, and therefore, you know, it has to be at, you know, one height, you know, the highest possible, and we still can't build an entire boat. The height of the whole shop, it has to go outside to do that.
So in your opinion, is that then the least relief necessary to still make it feasible, even though there's still another component that you're not able to accommodate, but you've made alternate provisions for the pilot house
Yes,
piece? So the relief of the 46-foot matching height, it is your testimony that that's the least amount necessary in order to construct these vessels.
absolutely.
Okay.
Exactly.
And then out of curiosity, can you describe where the doors are going to be on the addition? It has no bearing on the application, but just.
So we actually don't know yet. I mean, that is something as we sort of look at the building and we think about how we're going to use it or and how the pieces are gonna come in from the other shops. It does seem like a side door would be better than the front. There'll be doors in both east and south, but the size of those doors, is to be.
And is that something you would work on with your engineers during the
Yes,
design
yes,
plans
yes.
for this addition?
Yes,
And I know when we're at the site, there was concern raised about having adequate traffic circulation around the site. And you had indicated that some additions to the back of the office building were going to be removed,
yes.
so that ample space was still allowed between the end of the new Hall shop addition and where the office building is. Is that still the plan?
Exactly, so we still have the sort of the circle, you come in, the gates, which is it's not our far north gate near the wastewater treatment, but it's our main gate, so the trucks come in the main gate and they'll go, sometimes they'll turn around and go out that gate, but they could also go around and go out the farthest gate.
So,
That's the circle, we're going
Yeah.
to continue the same path for the.
so the addition will not impact the traffic circulation path that currently exists on the site.
Correct.
All right, will the addition create any further noise issues emanating from the site?
No, actually, what we did this year is we insulated and we put heat into the whole shop. To the current whole shop, and maybe if you walked in, you saw the light,
Mhm.
that was the insulation, and I'd already put insulation in the roof. And we have noticed a tremendous decrease in noise.
And will the addition be insulated in a similar
Yes, the
fashion?
addition will also, the roof and the side will be completely insulated.
So does
And
it-
heated, will
Yeah.
extend the heat.
which you testified that there was a need for heat due to weather conditions limiting the welding, the temperatures that this material can be
Yes,
sent.
the need for heat is, again, these are ABS class vessels, these are aluminum. And we have to wait several hours in the morning, and use different kinds of heaters to work this out. We can now just set the heat to go on, 4 o'clock, and we've got a warm environment by 7 o'clock for them to start.
All right. So is it your testimony that the noise is not going to be generating any additional noise, and that noise in the building will be mitigated through the insulation?
Yes,
Okay, we've addressed the traffic concern. You described why climate-controlled assembly area is required. You've described why the size is necessary and why you feel it's the least relief necessary. You've described why the height is the least relief necessary. Was there any other specific point that was requested to be explained that we've not covered to the board's knowledge?
I think we've addressed them all.
Okay.
There might be
So
some.
let me ask the zoning official if there is a clarification needed on the freeboard calculation to allow that 5 feet from the height can be discounted due to the fact that it's in the flood zone.
So the FEMA regulations allow municipalities to set the 5-foot freeboard. Now, the freeboard is set. There's a misconception as to how buildings are built. Some people believe that in a flood zone, it all has to be built up on stilts. That's not the case. Buildings that they have here, the sheds, we'll call them, they allow for the water to come in and out. So they are actually built to flood zone specifications, as long as all utilities are above that, 1 foot above what would be the flood zone. So that's where the freeboard comes in.
And so the height of the building then would be measured from the top of the freeboard distance.
That's correct.
So if the freeboard distance is 5 feet, then the height of the building in this case, for statutory purposes, is not the height from the ground, it would be the height from the top of the freeboard. And we've determined the freeboard is 5 feet, and 5 from 46.5 is 41.5. So the statutory height that we're measuring of the building is 41.5 feet, where 35 feet is required. And the 35 feet that's required, is it your understanding that that 35 feet is measured from the top of the freeboard elevation?
That's correct.
Okay, so I think we clarified that issue. Was there other specific points you wanted to make in support of your case that we haven't covered?
I think it's a wonderful opportunity for us, for the town and for the state of Rhode Island.
Was there anyone else in the public who wanted to offer any testimony with regard to this matter? Okay, seeing none others, now we can bring it back to the board. Are there further questions for the applicant or any other clarifications that are needed on the parameters of what is being presented?
Not for the applicant, I was gonna make the motion, but I don't, we're gonna do each motion.
Correct. So we
Separately?
need to do the special use first. So we can establish whether they are approved to have this special use or this modification to the special use that's existing. And then secondly, if that is approved, then we would have a motion to address the dimensional requirement for the height.
For the special use is doing the height, isn't it?
No, the special use is to modify their existing special use permit that was previously granted by this board, which allowed them to have boat manufacturing. They have a special use to allow boat manufacturing on the site. And they propose to increase the amount of area devoted to boat manufacturing. So we need to allow that to modify the existing special use, which extends the area allowed for boat manufacturing.
Okay,
So if you'd like to make a motion, and then we'll need specific findings of fact that satisfy each element based on the testimony that's been received, the documents that have been received, documents that are in the public record, such as any former decisions of this board that stand to govern this property.
all right, well, feel free to chip in. I'll make a motion to approve application 22-35, Mount Realty Company owner, Marshall Blount applicant, 461 to 489 Water Street, plat map 6, lots 99, 107, 98, 114, 11, 25, 93, 108, 109, 110, and 111. Request for a special use permit under section 3254.
Are we supposed to, didn't we merge these? So shouldn't he say?
Just the test.
Oh, just the testimony?
Well, no, we can, hold on, let's let him make the motion, and then we can make a finding with regard to the merger.
Okay.
And 3257 to amend the special use to add an extension to the current roof height of the Hull shop in the waterfront overlay district.
Okay, and the findings of fact that support the conditions of the special use are,
They are. I have to punt here a little bit, unfortunately, the very difficult application. The special use permit, the applicant has shown that special use will be compatible with the neighboring land uses. In that it is an extension of already an existing building. And we are looking to the applicant has shown that the building is too small to support the vessels efficiently that they have under contract. The existing shop is 180 by 60, equaling 10,800 square feet in non-conforming height of 46 feet 5.5 inches. Call that 46 and 6 inches perhaps. The proposed extension would continue the building envelope at the same height to the southeast, 45 feet by its 60-foot width, and continue the fabrication shop that is 20 feet wide and 105 feet. Total building size would be increased to 15,600 square feet. Remodeled building will be square and will allow for 2 transport ships to be built concurrently. The special use would not create a hazard in the neighborhood. The use is already under way. The Blount's have had the shipyard for many years. And it's barely noticeable from the street. And
Brad, do you want to add anything in here with regard to the traffic testimony and noise that could be?
Insulation and
we could say that traffic will not really be changed because it's the same amount of employees. They have ample parking. Noise, the building, present building, I believe the testimony was not insulated and is now insulated, and the new addition will be insulated. So more work will be actually being done inside, and it should be quieter for the neighborhood. What else can we say here? Traffic pattern will be the same. It doesn't affect Water Street in that regard.
they're also demolishing part of the building to help the flow around the new addition.
I was gonna, yep, we can put that, if you'd like to put that in there now, we can say that with the addition, the existing office building will be, part of that building will be taken down so that there'll be more room to move materials around and other parts of the shipbuilding operation, so it'll be a little easier. I'm not going to bring up lot coverage on this.
No.
Special use permit will be compatible with the community comprehensive plan. The Warren Town Planning Board has written letters to encourage us to pass this. The Chamber of Commerce of Warren has encouraged us to pass this. And the state of Rhode Island would like to see this underway because this is a facility that will help the offshore community and the wind farm industry. And it'd be good for the town of Warren and the state of Rhode Island.
I think we could also add that the special use is consistent with the comprehensive plan's future land use map for this area. That it is a use envisioned by the land use map.
We'll put that, please add that. And the public convenience and welfare will be served.
Because
Because it'll allow for the jobs for Warrenites. Will provide long-lasting skills and jobs to Warrenites. There's been unanimous support for the Blount Shipyard expansion from Warrenites and town officials. And basically, it's I think it's almost self-evident that it'll be helping the business build boats more efficiently, bring money and jobs to the area in the waterfront district. And certainly the public and convenience and welfare will be served with it.
okay, also add a finding of fact with regards to the lots that the special use is pertinent to. Based on the recorded decision of this board that is available in the public record. The finding, and I quote, with regards to this, the list of lots here, thus they are merged for the purposes of zoning. So those purposes of zoning are any and all purposes of zoning, indicating that these lots are merged for any purposes relating to zoning based on the board's finding of fact and recorded decision.
And just Barrett. And everything that you just stated was based on the application, all documentation provided, site visit, testimony, well, the applicant, correct?
Yes.
Are there any other amendments? I do have one condition from the planning board that the recommendation of the approval of the special use would be contingent upon the remodeling of the facade of the existing office building that faces Water Street, consistent with the designs submitted to the planning board in a previous application.
I think we also talked about lighting. We want more downward lighting.
Yeah,
So that
so
would,
any light, so we want to condition that any lighting, Jason, about the addition or on the whole shop?
Yeah, so any exterior lighting added to the Hull Shop building or to support the use of the Hull Shop building at night needs to be downward facing, non-adjustable and full cutoff to ensure that no lighting goes up into the air or out past the property line of the structure.
Other conditions or amendments or findings of fact relating to the special use? Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? Okay, so the special use is approved 5-0. So now we'll move to the application for a variance. So is there anyone who'd like to make this motion?
I can continue with that if you'd
Okay,
like.
we can go ahead with the motion on the variance.
Dimensional variance, the applicant has demonstrated a hardship due to the unique characters of the subject land and existing structures. The applicant has shown that the existing building is too small to build the support vessels efficiently that they have under contract. The existing shop is 180 by 60 feet, equaling 10,800 square feet, and non-conforming height of 46.5 feet. The proposed extension would continue the building envelope at the same height to the southeast, 45 feet by its width of 60 feet, with a continued fabrication shop that is 20 feet wide and 105 feet. Total building size will be 15,000 square feet. The model building will be square and allow for 2 transport ships to be built concurrently. The lot coverage will
Is not an issue.
it's not really an issue. It should be around 22%, and 30% is allowed. It should be noted that when they're considering the various lots that make up the Blount Ship building, it is actually a small addition. The hardship is not the result of any prior action of the applicant and does not result primarily from the desire to realize greater financial gain. Stated before, the shipyard does not have enough covered property to build this type of vessel. The granting of the variance will not alter the general character of the surrounding area, and the request conforms to the purpose and intent of the Warren zoning ordinance and comprehensive plan. We will note again that the planning board of Warren has encouraged us to approve this. The Warren Town Chamber of Commerce has done that, as well as in testimony by the plants of the state of Rhode Island would like to see this done, and it will help support Rhode Island's maritime industries. The granting of the variance will not alter the general character of the surrounding area. Yes, the proposed building expansion will not alter the character of the surrounding area in any way. The new addition is taking place with the Blount Ship within the Blount Ship building complex and should not be noticeable to the surrounding area. The addition is also close to the Warren wastewater treatment plant. It should not hurt or cause any undue odors to the nearby plant. The Warren Planning Board has enthusiastically given its approval. The proposed addition will provide long-lasting skills and jobs to Warrenites. The relief request is the least relief necessary for the Blount Ship building facility to build the transport boats effectively. As stated before, the increased lot coverage is small by nature when taking the whole 5.2 acre parcel in the aggregate. In approving the dimensional variance, the applicants have stated that they will be removing part of the existing building to the southeast of the addition to make more room between the buildings This will make driving, and transporting materials easier. The actual increase will be wider than Water Street itself. If the Warren zoning board were not to grant this dimensional variance, the hardship would be much more than an inconvenience. The result would be an increased cost to build these ships in a very competitive market. This would only result in the lost businesses and jobs in the Warren area. Any other additions?
If we could add that the dimensions cited by the applicant in the testimony and from the plan submitted and from the site visit demonstrated to be the least dimensions necessary for the processes required for the assembly, movement, and staging activities necessary to construct these type of vessels. We could also have a finding, again, that the same merger of these lots for consideration under the variance is pertinent to the decision of the board, the previous decision of the board, where it is said, thus they are merged for the purposes of zoning, meaning that they are merged for any matters relating to zoning. So this matter would consider these lots to be merged for this purpose. Oh, we should, do we memorialize the height of the,
You should say that.
taking into account the freeboard? And so maybe taking into account the 5-foot freeboard for FEMA regulations, the building height is measured from the top of the freeboard, not from the surface of the ground, given that the freeboard is 5 feet. The height from the ground is 46.5 feet. Therefore, the calculated building height is 41.5 feet, where 35 feet would be required. Are there other findings relating to the dimensional relief for the height of the building?
Just enter in the definition of the zoning director on the freeboarding.
Yeah, so we have the definition based on the testimony of the zoning official defining freeboard and how that is calculated within the flood zone and how measurements of building height are taken in relation to that freeboard dimension. And we still have the same condition from the planning board that the approval is contingent upon the modifications of the facade of the office building suitable to be in line with the plan previously submitted to the planning board. Any other conditions or additions or amendments? Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? Okay, so the motion is passed 5-0 for the dimensional relief for the proposed structure. So I think that concludes this particular matter. So good luck with the rest of the process here. We'll be now moving on to the next application. And thank you for those that are remaining for your patience.
Thank you very much.
Have a good evening.
Have a good evening.
We are moving to 2236 Toasted Bun Holdings owner, Five Girls Provision LLC, Alexandra Goldman applicant, 279 Water Street, plat map 4, lot
Made it.
96, request for a special use permit under section 3253 to allow a retail bakery use in the waterfront zoning district. Good
Please tell
evening.
us you brought both wine and cheese.
Just identify yourselves by name and address and we can record that.
Alexandra, Gateway Hustling there. Chelsea Moxie, 2010.
Okay, and just,
I'm sorry. I will take.
you might need to lower the mic.
That mic down, Alexandra Goldman, 8 Lighthouse Lane. And Chelsea Morrissey, 21 Minutes Lane.
Okay, so give us a brief description of what the special use is that you're seeking for this building.
It's gonna be called Wench and cheese boards, charcuterie boards, other provisions. specialty foods, chocolates. Gift basket.
Okay, and
Bakery. It says bakery here.
That was just.
What was that, Matt?
That's under the use. If you read it under the use, that's one of the options. It's grocery, bakery, drug variety, delicatessen, or similar retail business use. So this would be a delicatessen.
Well, I was wondering if you said wine and cheese.
Okay.
Bakery in there.
and so is this property presently used as a business?
So yeah, formerly it was the jewelry store.
Okay, so it's formerly a jewelry store, but it was a retail business. And your new proposed use is a similar to the delicatessen, bakery, et cetera, that was just described.
Will the items for sale be for consumption on site or will they be for takeaway? Okay.
Okay, and what will be the hours of operation of this business?
We're thinking Wednesday through Saturday, 11 to 6.
Wednesday through Saturday, 11 to 6. Would you ever need those to come in earlier for the business or stay later?
Possible, we'll have to see how it.
So what would be the maximum hours of operation you would envision ever needing? Because otherwise you have to,
Oh,
Cause-
I mean, I guess we will be definitely between 9 and 10.
so 9 o'clock in the morning, Wednesday through Saturday, until what would be the maximum time you would start?
Max on 7.
Really, you don't want to allow people on a nice summer evening, maybe to buy some wine and cheese a little later than that? Because if you want to change your hours, you're gonna have to come back, so.
You can always go shorter, just make it longer.
This, chair, not
Yeah.
to talk water on fire a little, but, let's keep in mind, Trump, the parking situation there.
Yeah.
And if this is shared parking area, something to consider when talking about, I mean, I think I saw somewhere in the application where it's gonna be different hours than Trump. Somewhere right there, so just to bring it to your attention, the Port Council, that was kind of brought up, I can say you're definitely gonna talk about parking. and stuff.
Yeah, we're gonna get to the parking plan. So just give us what are the reasonable hours that you think, if your business grew, whatever, that you would want to operate this business with respect to other businesses that are happening on the site.
Usually I would say it's possible that as we get going, we might, in the warmer months, want to stay open later. Maybe on a Friday evening. But we haven't gotten there yet.
But if you're saying we should ask for it now,
Yeah,
if we, I think if we.
If we grant more, you don't have to do that, those hours, but if you, in the future, a year down the road, that decision's already there, you can go that extra hour and just change your hours without having to come back to Zoom.
you don't have to come back here and
Right.
see us again.
So can we just say 9 to 9?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
And that's Wednesday through Saturday,
Yeah.
so not Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday.
Right.
Do you ever envision yourselves possibly being open Sunday, Monday, or Tuesday?
I don't think so. As of now.
And that's fine. It's same reasoning as the timing. You know, if you decide, hey, I'd love to be open Mondays, you'll have to come back and ask for it. So
Right.
that's the only reason we ask.
It's just the two of us, and I think that's.
Make it Sunday.
All right, and so,
So, sorry, if we're, let's say we're not operating, but we're picking up boards on a Sunday.
Right, that is
out?
that's.
Yes.
Okay. Leave that for now.
If you
And
have
then
customers,
we can take it back.
if there are customers coming to your place of business, then the place is in business. So what days of the week?
Let's go Tuesday through Sunday.
Also, I know we talked about the council in terms of days, fines, and that's associated with your license there. So I just want to make sure, you remember exactly what council approved? Town council? In terms of, did they address the times? Yeah.
I don't think we did time.
I mean, we could give times and say unless such other times as the council has determined.
Correct. Let's
Yeah.
So in fact, you do give 9 o'clock, but as of right now, the council said 7 o'clock based on your presentation, then you're gonna have to go back to our council. You got their approval, but the council also has approval on then that license to allow you to operate. till 9 o'clock. Just wanted to clarify that.
So we could give you approval, you could operate in the least amount of time, so that you don't have to go anywhere. But if you wanted to expand it, you'd have to go back to the council.
If they set specific limits on the time.
Okay.
So is it the nature of your business that customers are coming, purchasing something and leaving?
Yes,
They're not staying on the property for an extended period of time?
correct.
So it's a lot of in and out?
Yeah.
And are you anticipating both foot traffic and vehicular traffic?
Yes.
Okay, so you would think both.
So there's no physical dining. You're just looking to just.
How do you serve the, I can never say the word.
So-
The meat board. Is that gonna go into go?
So you would have the option of just coming in, choosing the various provisions that you want, you wrap it up and take it home, you do what you want with it. Or you can order a custom board that we will put together on a poly platter.
We can walk through the town and stroll. Thank you.
If that's
Right.
It's envisioning me and my wife walking.
How about deliveries? What kind of trucks would be bringing your deliveries of your provisions, and what would the hours be when those deliveries are happening?
So we don't have that yet. I'll have to get that to you.
Well, we'll need to know that.
Yeah.
Are you have,
Ultimately, what we typically in the past have done is put limits on how early deliveries can happen, because obviously the residents that live across the street, they don't want trucks opening up the roll doors at 6 o'clock in the morning.
and it should be consistent with what was approved for Chomp for their hours of delivery. It should not be any earlier.
Yeah.
It's so, it's located in a whole like
It's in that park.
centrifuge of restaurants, right?
It's the same-
Water. and then-
Yeah, it's on that
Yeah.
same property
Yeah.
where Chomp is in the long.
And track routes and.
Correct. It's
Yep.
in that.
And Tavino's for that matter.
Trevino's is like,
Yep, still the same, yeah, right there.
Yep.
Gotcha.
so trash, how are you handling any trash generated by the business? Are there dumpsters on the property? So there's a
So
dumpster.
it would be the same dumpster that's serving the Chomp building, or it's a separate dumpster?
The other shifts.
Okay, so it's the one that's in the
In
enclosure.
the hermetically sealed enclosure with the green.
Yes, yes.
So you will be placing your refuse in the dumpster space in the Chomp building.
I believe so.
Okay, that's what we're going with.
The types of trucks that would typically be delivering this, are we talking about small box trucks? Is this somebody in a passenger van?
As far as most of ours, we're only using one distributor right now. Their trucks are not huge. I don't know the exact.
Do you know the name of the distributor?
Yes, it will.
Oh,
Yeah,
well,
we've all seen their
Familiar
trucks.
with
we
that.
know those size trucks.
They navigate
Yeah, they're
Newport
similar.
well.
And how often would you imagine these deliveries might occur if they were to be happening?
Several times a week.
What's up with that?
It's not a
Oh,
large space, so it's not like. There's a huge shippers. and everything.
Yeah. Is there going to be any cooking on site, or is it just mostly going to be assembling and like, chopping up, cheese and meats and just,
Exactly, no cooking.
okay.
Refrigerated storage for the products?
Yes.
Nothing that would create hazardous odors or anything of that nature. No noise generating equipment.
I don't know, some of the cheese.
I know. It's not. Depends on the event.
So then with regard to the parking, there is an approved parking plan on file with the town that this board approved pursuant to the Chomp application. Are you proposing to make any alterations to the parking that's already been approved?
No.
Okay, so I think the record will show that the parking plan that is on file for Chomp and what was at the time the Muse property, that parking plan will remain in effect. And is it your testimony that your business will require either the same number or fewer parking spaces than Muse was required to have?
Yes.
Okay,
Well,
yes to, that it's gonna be the same.
Same or less.
Yes. And same, you know, similar hours, so it's really staggered, because they're gonna, Cafe Water Street is busy early in the morning. Shop will be busy later in the evening, so we'll kind of give you more stuff.
And you testify that your customers are not occupying the parking for long periods of time. It's an in and out type of business. Is there any signage proposed for the business? Different than what's there existing, because you have to come back if it's outside the
I
time.
understand Lynn's handling a side for the whole town structure. So that's kind of his thing, I'm not sure, I think it's. gonna be over there.
So the property owner is handling a
The sign.
unified sign.
Yeah.
for the
And he'll be coming to us when he's ready to install that signage.
Mr. Chair, looking at decision and what
Yeah.
the condition was, all deliveries, maintenance, trash pickup, shall not be done before 8 AM.
That was my recollection.
Monday through Saturday, not after the close of business. No deliveries, maintenance, or trash pickup shall be done on Sunday.
Okay, so you'll need to abide by those same conditions that were imposed with the Chomp decision.
One question, there is an awning with signage on it, does that count?
So you're allowed to reface existing signage within the framework that presently exists. So if within whatever space is on that awning, if you don't take down the awning in the framework of the awning, you're allowed to put new signage over top of the existing signage that presently exists. If you alter the size, dimension, framework, the awning in any way, you would have to come back again, or it will be part of the owner's comprehensive signage plan.
It's like 10:02. Extended.
Oh, yes. We're now at past 10 o'clock. Thank you for the reminder. So we'll need a motion if we wish to continue with this application beyond the appointed hour.
I'll make the motion.
All right, so the motion is made. Is there a second to
A second.
continue? Second, all in favor of continuing?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so we can continue with the application. So
We made it into overtime.
does the board have other specific questions with regard to the special use that's being proposed? Doesn't seem like it. Was asked if anyone in the public has any comments they'd like to offer with regard to this application. Again, we have to ask. Seeing none, we'll bring the discussion back. Do the two of you as the applicant have any further testimony or evidence you'd like to share with us that you feel would benefit explaining this use to us? Okay. Any further discussion amongst the board with regard to this application? Is there a motion on this application?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion.
Okay, so please go ahead.
All right, I move approval of application number 22-36, Toasted Bun Holdings owner, Five Girls Provision LLC / Alexandra Goldman applicant. 279 Water Street, plat map 4, lot 96. Request for a special use permit under sections 32-53 to allow a retail / bakery in the waterfront zoning district. In approving this motion, we find that the use will be compatible with the neighboring land uses. This is very much a food hotspot in town. There are numerous restaurants, numerous places to eat, and this certainly, this proposed use as a cheese shop and a bakery will certainly be compatible with that. The special use will not create a hazard in the neighborhood. With this application, as with others in this part of town and Water Street, while everyone is excited that it has becoming vibrant, traffic is always a prime concern. We've heard testimony today that the expected patrons will be a mixture of foot traffic and parking, and there's been testimony from the applicants that the parking usage will be similar to, if not less than, the current existing use of the jewelry store Muse. We find that the special use permit will be compatible with the community comprehensive plan. Again, this is furthering the economic development and revitalization of Water Street, giving yet another reason for people to come into Warren and spend their hard-earned tax dollars here. The public convenience and welfare will be served. Again, this is a continuing a pattern of increasing, traffic to Water Street, with interesting businesses that will be bringing people in, and certainly adding a variety to some of the different food options that are available to the town. As special conditions, we find that, again, that this would be a takeaway only, as this would be a bakery delicatessen type operation. Maximum hours and days of operation will be Tuesday through Sunday from 9 a.m. till 9 p.m. unless otherwise codified or so decreed by the town council. Deliveries and trash removal will not occur before 8 p.m. Monday through Saturday or after 9 o'clock p.m. Unless there is any other sort of stipulation already assigned to the
Hours of operation.
hours of operation.
And to clarify, I believe it's not before 8 a.m.
Oh, not before 8 a.m. Did I say after? Oops. Make a lot of very unhappy people. And again, there will be no trash collection or food deliveries on Sunday. We'll make note that the parking plan on file with the town for this parcel will remain in effect. I think that's it.
We should also just cite that the special use is consistent with the future land use map in the comprehensive plan. So this is a use endorsed by the town's comprehensive plan. Yes.
Sorry to interrupt. You have to report historic.
Oh, there was something, yes.
All right, and in granting our special use permit, the applicants will be required to be compliant with all state and local guidelines, including the Historic District Commission.
Yeah, so you're here yesterday,
No,
did very well.
it doesn't matter what they say.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be fine.
It's a window issue for your result.
We'll fix it.
It's actually, I think, special meeting.
Yeah, yeah.
It's okay, so you just have to comply with whatever is set forth by the Historic District Commission. Other amendments or conditions? Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so the motion is passed 5-0. Good luck with getting your shop operational.
And most importantly, when do you guys think you'll be open?
Later than.
Okay,
Good luck. I have a question. What's the name? But maybe that's the bakery. Hot buns.
Toasted?
Oh, toasted buns.
That's Sean.
Oh,
that's Sean. They're the owner of the property.
Or wedge.
Yeah, gotcha.
Nice.
Wedge. We did hear that earlier. So. I told her I did, and I'm like.
Okay, so we have 3 administrative things we'd like to.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Would you mind apparently, anything either approve or bicycle corrections?
Oh, I'm sorry, we didn't do the minutes. So yes, we need to approve minutes of the July 20th site visit, August 3rd site visit, August 17th site visit, and August 17th meeting. Is there any discussion on the minutes? Okay, also September 6th. Is there any discussion on the minutes? Is there a motion on these
I'll make a
minutes?
motion to approve the minutes.
Is there- Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so the minutes are approved. So the administrative items, if the solicitor can just give us a brief overview of changes to the in-law apartment guidelines.
So basically, most recent legislation that was passed and signed by the governor, there's been a major overhaul with accessory dwelling units. You see those things, 2 places in our zoning, one is by in-law apartments, the other one is this property where it is 5 acres or more, you can have that second accessory dwelling unit. It's changed even the basic definition in how the law is formulated. It basically says that if a city or town currently allows 7 dwelling units, the state law now is our guide. Each municipality does not have to allow it, as all the restrictions that were once in place no longer comply. For example, if you had a residential in the property and a R20 or greater zone, by right, you can put an accessory dwelling unit, detached. Things like we've seen in the past with their law, which has to be attached. If utilities combined, it's completely changed the whole landscape of what they look like.
So will there be an amendment to the ordinance to address that?
I look at that. and say, it's, restriction to a commitment can be.
The family relationship.
Do that, the separate water service line, typically our ordinance now says common, no longer do that, basically, whatever they do, they can do. You can't impose unreasonable dimensional requirements, 600 square feet, so it is, they took away a lot.
Does it still have to meet the setbacks and lot coverage?
Correct, but we can't, there's really, it made it. It's going to be completely up in terms of allowing these things, but it does allow the municipalities to put reasonable restrictions on them. Okay, and that's for us to interpret, to give guidance to you. So what our office is going to do is basically saying, is going to be by the end of this month and next month, we'll have a memo saying this is what the law says. We by having those two provisions that allow now, they're allowed in Warren. However, this is what we think either we're okay with the current restrictions, or we need to amend a couple of different things to get in compliance with the new law.
It puts us on the lid for making those decisions, you know,
Yeah,
it's wide open.
it's wide, it's wide open because we have into different areas and state law applies to us, so.
Is there a distinction now that still remains between an accessory dwelling and an in-law apartment, or is it all just?
In our definitions, in what it says is considered an accessory dwelling unit. Third sentence, fourth sentence, it's right. in
So
there.
if somebody wants to do an in-law apartment.
Yeah, by right,
they
by
can
right.
confidence with their house.
By
We
right.
can't say.
R20 is a greater by right, meaning they won't even have to get a special use permit by completely excludes it. Saying in fact, those applications on some restrictions in terms of if it doesn't change the footprint, it just has to be done administratively.
But how many,
As a
how many
developer.
properties do we have in our 20? This one, and
What's that?
most of our properties in less than
Yeah,
20.
it just depends, but it really opens up, you know, a can of worms. in terms of- Hopefully, the restrictions that we have now that we've been applying, we consider reasonable, right? And we can continue on with them. However, I can tell you that, it will, and it really says, refer to your solicitors for guidance, what is reasonable, what's not reasonable. So I know our office is currently looking at our ordinances in addition to other municipalities that we cover, and we're certainly gonna have a memo prepared for the town, either amendments, changes, and that's obviously done. through
This-
the town council.
And so how does this impact, you know, if this is still considered a dwelling unit, does that mean it is dwelling on a long-term basis? Versus someone wants to rent this accessory unit for 2 nights a week?
We're working on that as well. The council is,
I really did. Look at the definition, we just looked at the definition. It's basically, it may take various forms included, but not limited to a detached unit, a unit that's part of an accessory structure, such as a detached garage. So you really, that's within the law itself.
Garage, we just saw
So I'm just, you know, the can's open. Airbnbs and all that other type of thing is currently being examined by the town council. There's drafts of ordinances to regulate
And
them.
we just went to, they wouldn't even have to come to us.
Well, we're trying to hurry up with this interpretation to give you guidance, and we do have restrictions. Somebody can come now, we can apply them.
But that
Then-
was in our 20. So that.
Correct.
We would have been going the old route, right?
So it's made a lot of changes, and starting with the definition versus what we're very accustomed to.
600 square feet, is that out the window?
Could be
It is
any
up there.
size.
Yeah, we can't, unless our office guy, June says that is reasonable, right? Unless. So that's kind of,
The 4 corners. What we.
Yeah, correct.
would be reasonable.
Correct.
These are, do we go back to our record and what we've made in the past, or it sounds like we were going by the guidelines in the past, and those guidelines. were
Correct.
followed. So
We have to basically reconstruct what reasonable is.
Correct. And what we do is we look at other municipalities and see what everybody else is doing. And for example, I think I saw one that had 300 square feet. Basically what's that, a room with, a bed in or something. So, so I'll give you guidance within the next month or so in terms of, how we really feel about what's currently here, how this applies to this board, and whether or not this town has to make amendments to the current zoning on it.
Gonna be 1,000 feet then, what you're saying?
I'm just saying that
Could be.
I read you the definition and it really says, then he starts to, shall not be excessive restrictions, impose unreasonable dimensional requirements. What does that mean?
I wonder, like, is it reasonable that an accessory structure is smaller in footprint than the primary structure? I mean, if you had a primary house of 1,500 square feet and you built an accessory structure of 3,500 square feet, is that really an accessory structure? Where is the cutoff?
That's a cutoff. I will give you quick guidance. We've looked at it quickly, and we think that what we have in the books now is pretty good. I don't want to say that we're not going to make changes.
Right.
However, we interpret a quick initial review. Yeah, correct. Well, we're okay. But however, there will be some changes, how big in terms of footage, detached. It's really a can of worms, and they passed this legislation with the whole idea that this is going to solve or may help with the housing crisis in Rhode Island.
Oh, the
In
people
fact,
can build extra housing.
They've even made a component of this law to say that if there's certain things in place, it can also count towards your affordable home calculations.
Is there a limit on quantity per property? Like, could you build 6 accessory dwelling units on your property?
Our current ordinance says 1, you can only have 1. So it doesn't specify whether or not 1 or 2. I mean,
But it still has to fit within the coverage and setbacks that are appropriate for that zone, although I suppose the setbacks would then apply to an accessory structure setbacks.
Exactly.
Versus,
Yeah, exactly.
but I mean, I'm assuming it's
Yeah.
gonna be more than 120 square feet as an accessory dwelling unit, so one would think it would have to apply.
So for the sake of argument, we could expect to see the Frerick Farm multi-residential accessory structure coming down the road sometime soon.
So also the code, it just changed, and anything under 200 square feet, you don't need a permit for.
Under 200.
Well, any accessory structure. So like a shed,
But it still has to meet zoning setbacks.
has to meet zoning setbacks, but you don't need a permit for it, and you don't, it has to meet code. But you don't have to have inspections, you don't have to have a permit.
So 200 square feet.
Yep. 200 square feet. So all the, pretty much sheds. I mean, majority of the sheds, you don't need a permit for. Tiny houses.
Big shed,
We've had bigger ones come in here for sheds.
That's why.
Probably do a 10 by 20 shed, it would be an in-law apartment.
There you go.
When you're fine, you can go memo.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
what-
All right, so finishing that item, we'll expect a memo for further guidance. Does anyone have any comments on the points that will be circulated to the town manager? So the intent is that those points will be crafted into the fashion of a memo that will be communicated to the town manager with a copy to all council members and also a copy to the solicitor with the direction that the solicitor's office will provide supporting legal position of why this is recommended for the town to pursue.
That's about the email.
Yes.
Chair, sorry. If I may, I actually probably could focus this to town manager, a motion to town manager at this point, and also a motion to our office provide some legal backing. Or I know you spoke to Tony today in regards to this issue, and he certainly expressed the same concerns or understood the concerns from this board and the points made by the chair.
So we have had a request, since it was on the agenda last month and it was noticed by a council member, that the memo be circulated simultaneously to the council.
Take a motion to say.
So we need to make a motion. So the motion would be the points expressed in the email that was circulated shall be drafted into the form of a letter to be drawn up by the chair. And this letter will be signed by the chair, listing all members of the board, also stipulating that they agree to this memo and will be delivered electronically to the town manager with copy to all members of the council and to the solicitor's office, and the solicitor will be providing legal backing to support that position.
So moved.
Okay, is there, yeah, second, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so that's passed. We will circulate the memo. And the calendar for the coming year, does anyone have any issues with it, or do we have a motion to approve it as circulated?
Mr. Chair, the January and June meetings are ones I will probably not be able to make, but
Okay.
otherwise I think it's okay.
Okay, we have alternates.
I think it's too early for me to comment. We do take a vacation. And I don't know whether it's going to be in February or April to coincide with the kids' vacation.
Again, I mean, we can adjust if needed
And I have another request. I actually have to,
regarding the calendar.
I'm sorry, this coming calendar, this current calendar.
All right, well, let's vote on this. So is there a motion on the calendar as distributed?
Motion to approve the 2023 schedule as circulated.
Okay, second, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the calendar is approved. And your request with regard to the current calendar?
I can't make them.
All right, so it'll be noted that you're excused from the November meeting. So we need to make sure we have a quorum for that meeting and any continued applications.
I just have a quick administrative,
Yes,
so this past month it came that, and I emailed, I believe, and let you know that the applicant, we had a couple applications come in that weren't complete. Obviously, we had one tonight. So I've made a administrative change to, instead of Fridays before, with moving it to Wednesdays before at noontime, and all applications have to be complete to receive. That gives us a little buffer of 2 days, because what happened was Monday was when it was due, so we didn't really have the weekend. So now we'll be able to take the application, go through it thoroughly, make sure that it's complete, and before it
That's
gets to, and then,
so any supplemental materials they need to provide need to now be by the Wednesday prior instead of the Friday.
So if you get anybody who comes to you and says, hey, what's going on? I thought it was Friday. In the office, we've changed that. I mean, it's tough. Rhonda gets it, and next thing you know, we have to try to throw it all together, and then.
So we probably have to make a motion to amend the official rules and procedures as passed by the board, that any supplemental materials must be received by the Wednesday prior to the meeting as opposed to the Friday. Is there a motion? Okay, is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, so the official rules and procedures will be amended as described.
Is there a cap on the number of applications we can actually handle?
Yes, oh, good, thank you for mentioning that. So I wanted to just clarify that. So per the rules and procedures, the cap on applicants, meaning unique different individuals, is 6. So if one person has both a special use and a variance, that counts as one applicant. Correct. And it is my recommendation that the numbering be done in a fashion such that if there are 2, it be numbered as 1A and 1B, representing one applicant with 2 matters, and then the next item be number 2. And so in the count of the 6, and this is in the rules and procedures, any continued applications take first precedence to fill those 6 slots, and then any remaining slots may be filled by new applications on a first come, first served basis.
So I think more like the rules and procedures are actually online. And just so you know, well, it's tonight, couldn't be labeled A and B in that fashion, because 24 being much sooner than 35.
So just a quick clarification, because I spoke to Andrew about this. So tonight, if we didn't remove the first 3, we would have had 10 cases. So essentially, just to clarify, the 6 cases include old business
That
as
is
well.
correct.
So we would have heard the first three, and then we would have heard the next three. and that-
4, 5, and then the Blount.
Blount would be-
counted as
yeah.
number 6. So the last 3 would not have been on the agenda. However, the procedures do allow for the chairman's discretion, if it's known that certain things might be withdrawn, or someone's going to ask for a continuance, we need a site visit, then the chairman, at their discretion, can allow an increase in the number of items.
Moving forward, we will go 6
Yes.
unless there is a double, then we'll add. Other than that, we will only have 6 cases.
Yep, old and new, a total of 6. And then if there's a conversation we need to have prior to the agenda being filed, if there's extenuating circumstances, or something's just kind of a rubber stamp thing, someone's coming for like a septic system, we can discuss that, and if I believe it's appropriate, we can add that to the agenda.
And for that, would you give the administrative power that if we have something that is just a quote unquote rubber stamp, we can move that to the front so that way they're not here all the whole.
It should be listed in the order that it was received, and then I can make the determination if I feel it's necessary to change
Okay.
the order.
Thank you.
Any other little concerns?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, on favor, aye.